Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto was an alien hero in DC. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Helghy and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. The harsh hisses and snarls that formed most of the Gordanian language was the first thing that Naruto could perceive as he began to awake. Suddenly he found himself back in the Berian spice fields. He and his squadron carving their way through an entire legion of Gordanian warriors. The battle cries of his troops and animalistic roars of the reptilian aliens drowned out all other sound. He couldn't even hear the blasts from his attack clearly over the din of the battle surrounding him. It took a moment to fully realize he wasn't back there. The Berian bloodbath, as it had been nicknamed, was what cemented Naruto's meteoric rise in rank in the war with the Gordanians. It was also the first time that they had taken special interest in his person. Something that never boded well for an individual. Trying to take in his surroundings, Naruto quickly realized that while he could hear Gordanians around him, he couldn't in fact see anything. Struggling just slightly, he found that he was also bound and gagged, as well as blindfolded. Trussed up like a holiday roast. He thought bitterly. It confirmed his worst fear, he was a prisoner of the Gordanians. He couldn't exactly recall how, but the ache screaming across his body at least told him he didn't go down without a fight. The thought was less comforting than he hoped it would be. Bound and blindfolded as he was, Naruto could only sit and listen to the area around him and hope to figure something out. It was easily clear that he was on a ship, a prisoner transport, and from what little of the Gordanian tongue he had picked up during his people's war with them, he knew he wasn't the only prisoner. He wasn't even the most valuable one evidently. He managed to also glean their destination. Rarely did Naruto feel true dread. He felt fear, even terror, often on the battlefield, but it was easily pushed through to do what must be done. But to hear that he was to be made a pet and gladiator for some citadelian, while being unable to budge from his restraints, caused dreadful despair to truly soak into him for the first time in his life. It was impossible to know exactly how long he stayed like that. Sitting and listening. Waiting. He had plotted around all manner of escape attempts. The only decent one would be when they finally stopped and they made to transfer him. The problem with that was, they were likely only going to transport him when they had made it to their destination, the core of the citadel itself. There would be no escape once he was there. The Helghian officer didn't simply throw in the towel though. They forged on and smashed through any barrier that stood in their way. Or at least it was what they told the warrior and citizen castes back home to keep morale up. Truth was, Naruto had seen plenty of his fellow superior caste soldiers die throughout his lifetime. Even his first mates had crossed that river. He'd prefer to receive a glorious end like them to becoming the enemy's toy. Nothing but pain and humiliation lie in wait for him when this ship landed. Naruto had never been a particularly religious person, but in the hours at the very least, spent listening to his surroundings and blindfolded, he couldn't help but fall back onto the prayers to his people's deities. The 9 spirits, even the Master Sage and Queen Goddess herself were called upon. Not that he truly expected an answer. When the ship suddenly jolted and the Gordanians quieted before falling into a panic, Naruto suddenly began rethinking his flippant attitude toward the gods. Whether it was actually an answered prayer or just chance, the Gordanian ship fell into chaos in moments. Screams, roars, snarls, and hisses of panic, orders, and pain washed over him. Among them all he could make out the sounds of his fellow prisoner. A woman, and from the shouts he could just make out, a Tamaranian. It wasn't long before the sound of Gordanians grew quieter and quieter as fewer and fewer remained. He could still hear the blasts echoing down the corridor just outside whatever room he was kept in. Soon though all was quiet beyond the light humming of the ship's machinery around him. Naruto could sense the woman before he heard her. A slight sensation of energy just before he could hear her breathing and the light tap on the floor as she settled down on the floor in front of him. Despite knowing she was there and likely reaching out, Naruto couldn't fully hold back the tensing of his muscles as he felt her fingers brush past his face to release the gag and blindfold on his head. After a brief pause upon noticing him tensing at her touch, the woman unfastened the 2 restraints, letting Naruto see his surroundings for the first time in who knew how long. Blinking to adjust his eyes to the dim room and working his jaw wordlessly to ease the stiffness that had set in, Naruto was pleasantly surprised by the woman before him. He had expected the Tamaranian to be attractive. Like his own people, theirs was a civilization built upon a warrior and survivor mindset. So like the Helghians, the Tamaranians all typically look to be the peak of physical fitness. The better to combat the ever-expanding citadel forces, and the healthier the next generation would be so they too could continue the fight. Despite his expectations, he hadn't really been prepared to find himself scanning her up and down like he would when searching out a mate back home. It took him a moment to shake his head clear of such thoughts. It most definitely wasn't the time, but the gladiatorial attire they had forced the woman in would have made moving past her looks a difficult task for any hot-blooded Helghian male. let alone one still in the later phases of puberty. The woman spoke to him, but sadly he knew even less of her people's language than he did of the Gordanians, only the words ship and crashing stuck out to him. They stuck out very clearly in the jumble of foreign words and put his mind on task. Help me out of these restraints, and we can find a way to land rather than crash. Naruto said, hoping she understood more of his language than he did of hers. Sadly she simply stared back at him, blinking big green eyes in confusion. Oh okay Naruto stammered trying to come up with the proper Tamaranian terms. Settling on the closest words he had to provide for the situation he tried to point at the restraints with his chin. Aid, please? Naruto asked. Again the woman blinked at him for a moment before letting out a string of unintelligible words. She seemed to stand waiting for him to respond, but Naruto could only sigh in frustration at the situation. Really did they need to be doing this right now as the ship was evidently on course for crashing? I can't understand. Naruto began to try and explain, even though he knew she wouldn't understand him, only to be cut off as suddenly she bent forward and captured his lips with her own, shocking him. Once more Naruto had to force down his natural impulses to take the woman as his mate. Forcing himself to remember the Tamaranians could learn the languages of another species via lip contact, he waited for her to back away once again. I will free you from your restraints, but we must hurry, Hakanian. The ship will soon crash, and we must be in the safety pod before it reaches the planet's atmosphere. She explained. Naruto nodded as he watched her release the restraint binding him. Even now his vision was far clearer than when the blindfold had been first removed. He had thought his fellow prisoner had been attractive before, but now clearly saw her for the first time. Long, wild, red hair and deep orange skin with bright green glowing eyes. Her features were typical of her people but exotic throughout the rest of the universe. What surprised him though was that she nearly matched his own imposing height of 6.5 feet in height. That and her physique was beyond what most women even among his own people could achieve. It didn't help matters that she had an airy voice that seemed to solely entice him further. By the 9 spirits, it really has been too long since I had a mate if I'm this enthralled with everything else going on. Naruto lightly reprimanded himself mentally. Once free of the restraints, and now doing his best to avoid eyeballing the evocatively clad Tamaranian, Naruto scanned the room better hoping to find the rest of his equipment. He was sure he had been taken from the battlefield, so surely his weapons and armor remained on board somewhere. You're looking for others? The Tamaranian asked. No, I'm looking for my armor and weapons. Naruto replied as he continued to search around before stopping and turning to her fully. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, captain of the Berian Vanguard. Who are you and how do you escape? The woman paused a moment before giving a small sad smile to her fellow former prisoner. I have actually been a prisoner of the Gordanians for some time. Fighting in gladiator matches at their different bases and outposts, acting as their servant or simply serving as their pet. I was sold to them in exchange for a temporary truce for Tamarin. Sold? Your own people surrendered you to the Dragon Men. How vile, still you must have been an important commander. Especially if the Gordanians wished to humiliate you by making you a servant. Naruto was a bit shocked at how long she had been a prisoner. It would make sense that after 6 years she wouldn't be kept under as much security as himself. They probably considered her spirit broken. It also checked out with the impromptu peace the Gordanians and Tamaranians had for roughly 4 years. Sadly it seemed this woman's sacrifice had bought only a handful of years of peace rather than any kind of lasting agreement. Yes, I am important to my people I guess. Naruto could tell she was suddenly uncomfortable with the discussion. I am Coriander, Princess of Tamarin. Naruto stopped short at that bomb of information. The missing second princess of Tamarin. So that's who had been traded for their peace while the new queen commoned a race to rally her forces to stabilize the lines of defense for the Tamaranian homeworld. To sell one's own sister. He was quite glad he was never in the place of the rulers of his own world. Both sets, the Cage Council who ruled with true power and the superior caste or the members in the royal caste who had become nothing but frail puppets thanks largely to the never-ending wars Hakania was faced with. I wasn't expecting that. Naruto finally answered the princess as she lifted slightly off the ground and glided past him into the corridor. This way. I watched as they loaded you aboard. Your armor looked damaged, but if you wish to retrieve it, it's just past here. She called back as he followed after her. Naruto followed after her and they came to a small storage room, thankfully not far from the safety pod that she was intent on them commandeering. Everything is here. Even my blades. He said letting out a large sigh in relief. Thank you Coriander. Naruto quickly began dressing. Coriander didn't seem to care for his state of undress. Then again, she was practically in little more than a skin-tight revealing set of strips over her intimate regions. Neither was too bothered by their own or each other's lack of decency however, with both societies not having much time to worry over such taboos as getting dressed in front of someone of the opposite gender. In fact, Coriander had far less hesitance than Naruto did at looking over her impromptu comrade's body. He was at least 2 inches taller than her, and she could tell he was a warrior by his body as he dressed. It was less the well-defined musculature and more the map of scars crossing his arm and torso. She could even recognize the types of weapon to make them. The telltale burn pattern from a Gordanian photon blaster and the starred gouge from a Brank's trident dart. Along with his impressive warrior's physique though were features that her people would find most exotic, much like how her elder sister was back home. Naruto's eyes were a bright blue with a slitted pupil, and his hair was a bright yellow. Brighter even than gold. It reminded her of some flowers that grew back home in the palace gardens. On his face he had 3 tattoos slashed on each cheek and she couldn't help her curiosity being piqued. Lastly was an odd tattoo on his chest. A spiral with several small details surrounding and intertwining with it. It was complex and had many symbols in total, but now was not the time to stand by and ogle her new companion. Once dressed in his armor, excluding the cracked helmet he held at his side, Naruto looked even more intimidating than she had realized. He truly lived up to the title he claimed. Captain of the Vanguard indeed. She'd heard of the Berian bloodbath, everyone in the Vega sector had after all. The enemies of the Citadel marked him as a hero for his actions there. The Citadel simply marked him on their list of persons to capture for their own designs. The fact he had made enough of a name for himself that she had heard of him even as a slave of the Gordanians was far beyond impressive. "Let's get out of here," Naruto said as he stepped across the hall. Coriander followed after him. The escape pod was very utilitarian and the term pod fitted perfectly in description. No steering, no controls except for a big launch button. The seats were simple and most definitely not designed for the likes of anyone besides the dragon-like Gordanians. They were much too large. Thankfully the harnesses tightened down enough that it wasn't too much of an issue, but even Naruto and Coriander's large frame slid around in the seat at the tightest setting. "This will be unpleasant," the princess said as the ship neared the outer atmosphere of Earth at high speeds. "You can say that again," Naruto grumbled. "This will be quite unpleasant," Coriander said much louder as if Naruto was having difficulty hearing her. "Thanks," he chuckled. It was brief, but a little snippet of innocent humor helped calm his nerves. With a steadying breath he slammed his fist onto the launch button, slamming the escape pod's door shut and launching them away from the ship. The ride was much worse than he had expected. The planet they approached had a far thicker atmosphere than either of their homeworlds, the same for the Gordanian world of Karna as well. Violently shaken and slammed back and forth in their seats. The free space in the oversized seats threw them back and forth against the harnesses, roughly eventually dislodging Naruto's helmet from his gear and sending it flying across the pod. Coriander barely managed to lean to the side and avoid the thick armored piece as it bounced off the wall, leaving a small dent and chipped paint in its wake. Naruto wasn't as lucky as she was though as the helmet rebounded straight back into his own head. The captain was out like a light from the blow to his temple. Flashback. Naruto's breath came out in ragged gasps as he ripped his blade from yet another Gordanian's throat. The reptilian collapsed while clutching at the wound and gurgling in unintelligible cries for help. All around him the bodies of Gordanians and his own troops lay scattered in the violet and indigo fields of Berian spice. Hundreds of Hykanians dead, thousands of their enemies. And yet the fighting continued. It wasn't supposed to be like this. All his scouts and intelligence reported that the Citadel forces in the region were few in number and beginning to withdraw to prepare for an offensive on the Bur's southern continent. As it stood however, Naruto and his men were facing down entire legions of Gordanian troops supported by armor and aircraft. His initial strategy, agreed upon by his second-in-command Shikamaru and commander of the forward recon unit Sasuke, was for Sasuke to launch a small surprise attack near the Citadel forces' staging area and withdraw, luring them into an ambush for his forces. Naruto lost contact with Sasuke and the rest of his recon troops almost immediately, and instead of the enemy force he expected, an entire army rolled into position for the ambush. His brief hope that they would move along was dashed as they began setting up a new base camp, and he was left with no choice. Either launch the ambush against a massive enemy force and use the surprise to their advantage, or wait to be found and picked off. The ambush went off perfectly as planned despite the change in numbers of enemies. Had the enemy forces been closer to what was suspected, Naruto's attack would have seen practically no casualties for his own forces. Now though there was hardly any of his own troops left. 300 of the finest Hykanian superiors and more than double that of the warriors had launched a surprise attack on the Citadel troops from hidden tunnels made with the superiors' powers. After 5 hours of gritty brutal fighting, less than 50 superiors remained and Naruto could count the number of his warriors left on fingers and toes with some left over. The Citadel troops still had fresh forces held back waiting to rush in and finish them off. He couldn't understand his opponent's mentality. They didn't care for their troops at all. Every casualty his force suffered tore at his heart, but he could physically see the commander of his enemy. The blob-like citadelian grinning as his own troops fell like ripe crops in harvest. Captain Naruto, there's no chance. We tried. Shikamaru said with grief as he approached his old friend in the brief moment of peace before the Gordanians launched their next wave. Naruto's small force held a narrow ridgeline in the valley where the battle had begun. Terraced fields of Birian spice lay trampled and scorched by the battle. Shikamaru began only to pause as the citadelian stood off his throne-like chair and motioned for a handful of servants and guards to bring something forward. Both commanding officers grimaced and glared hatefully at the sight before them. Two Yuling Branks warriors dragged the corpses of the recon unit before them. Dead to a man, their team leader among them. Naruto turned as he heard a quiet sob from his medical officer. He frowned as he watched her struggle to suppress her fit of emotion. Shikamaru, we're dead here. I'm going to go all out and draw them in. You take our remaining people and book it as fast as you can. Leave the warriors with me. They won't be able to keep up and I'm sure I can use the cover fire from their rifles. Naruto ordered. Shikamaru stared at the impassive faceplate of his friend and leader's helmet before slowly nodding. He hated it, but it made sense. Plus it was their people's way. The one for the many. The weak for the strong. The strong for those yet to come. It was the Hekanian credo of sacrifice. I'll get them home, Captain. He answered softly before quickly running to give orders. Naruto nearly let out a sigh as Sakura landed beside him. He knew better than to tell her no though. For Hekanian women, they bonded to their mate almost obsessively and Sakura's had just been hauled around before her eyes like some trophy. To try and order her back would just waste breath and time. Instead he took comfort in the fact he wouldn't be fighting the horde in front of him alone. He turned to look at the determined yet terrified and heartbroken faces of the 16 warriors that would accompany himself and Sakura into death. This was supposed to be the moment when a leader gave a rousing speech. When he was to rally his troops and pull out an impossible victory, but he had been fighting for hours already and the only thing he expected to fuel him into this coming fight was hatred of their enemy. So he wouldn't rouse them with false heroic words. He'd just lay it out in front of them. You all deserve to go home to your families and be celebrated as heroes for what you did here today and throughout our entire campaign here on Burr. It's unfair of me to order you into battle with the only outcome being a painful and brutal end. War isn't fair though. You've all seen that. You've lived it. You're warriors. You were bred for it. Naruto said as he faced them. I won't order you to fight with me, I'd like your help in taking as many of them with us as we can, but if you think you might have a chance to survive by running. Take it. You won't be accused of cowardice or looked down upon for it. To stay here with me is to die. To stay here with me is to also kill though. That's the real reason I'm staying. Someone has to and I want to kill as many of those lizard fucks as I can. If you want a few for yourself, just shoot down as many as you can and prime a grenade when they get close. The 9 love a good martyr, or so my mother always told me. Naruto said with finality as he collected up his blades and began slowly walking down the slope toward the citadel forces. Sakura caught up to him easily and for a moment walked in silence before she finally broke the quiet. What was that back there? She asked. A speech I guess. He groused. His head wasn't in it at the moment, was she going to nag on his leadership even now? I liked it. Pretty morbid, but every last one of them started pulling ammo belts and pouches off the dead. Seems it did the job. She said with a chuckle. The woman grunted before removing her helmet and tossing it to the ground beside her. Death would come sooner or later and she always hated those stuffy things. Well, it's been not pleasant, but I guess an adventure. She said with an odd mix of sadness and humor. Yeah, one hell of an adventure. Regrets? He asked one of his eldest friends. None that matter much in the end. She replied as a faint glow began to coat her blades and she began picking up the pace to match her captain. The words of the sage were something like, live your life with joy and find your death with no remorse. Naruto stated as his own blades began to hum with thin coats of energy. I always wondered how the son of a priestess ended up an officer on the battlefield. Sakura said with a rough laugh. You forget, I'm the son of a priestess in a cage. I was told I was meant to either be the speaker of the 9 or the cage that broke the citadel. Guess all that shit about predictions and prophecy was always bullshit, huh? Naruto answered. I could see that happening. It should have happened. Sakura said as both began to bound toward the charging lines of Gordanians. Should have, but didn't. Doesn't matter now. All that matters is I get a few hundred more tallies to my name before I meet the spirits. He roared as he launched himself forward and impacted the first rank's foe Gordanian infantry. Naruto's blades cut through them like butter and he carved a path of destruction into the heart of the enemy formation, letting them circle around and surround him entirely. In his head he cackled at the prospect of simply being able to attack in every direction and kill the lizard men. Nearby but out of sight Naruto could hear Sakura butchering her own path through the Gordanians. She lived up to her nickname of Banshee as she howled in rage and slaughtered their prey. Every now and again a random Gordanian would drop dead from a well-placed shot from the ridgeline behind them. The fighting continued for what felt like ages. The dragon men would rush at him, and he'd fluidly butcher them, and then they'd pause for a moment to try and think of the best way to approach him, during which time he would rush them and carve up as many as he could. They had just begun one of the brief pauses in battle when he heard a chorus of victorious roaring come from the Gordanians to his rear. Shooting a glance that way he saw a few had managed to take the ridge, and despite taking dozens with each of them, all of the warrior caste soldiers he had left there had perished. 16 small bloody craters littered the ridge, and a twinge of bittersweet pride raced through his soul at the honorable deaths of his soldiers. "Well, come on, I know I'm scary and all, but somebody has to attack," Naruto taunted, causing the beasts to launch yet another series of rushed attempts to hack, blast, or simply grab him. Naruto severed heads from necks, arms from shoulders, and bisected entire Gordanian warriors with ease, while the throng continued to circle him. By now, the bodies on the ground had begun to pulp as stomps and lunges turned them and the muddy ground into a singular mixture. Another series of cheers rolled across the valley, and Naruto knew his childhood friend had found her end at the hands of their enemy. Grief and rage wrapped themselves around his heart at the thought of his two closest friends. Both were heroes of Helghy, and he knew he should celebrate their passing on to the Pure Lands as was custom, but he couldn't help the pain that their deaths brought him. At least he knew he'd join them and all his other loved ones in paradise soon. Having regained some of his energy from the day's earlier battle, Naruto changed tactics, throwing the Gordanians into disarray. He turned to using the elemental techniques that terrified his people's opponent so much. Gouts of flame enveloped entire squads of Gordanian soldiers and burned them to crisp. Their airwaves cooked to a point where they couldn't even scream at the sudden pain. Spears of earth impaled dozens of unlucky lizard men, giving them slow agonizing death as they slid further down the spikes. Tiny marble-sized beads of water shot out at speeds fast enough to pierce their reptilian skin, carving through their brains and hearts with relative ease. Blades of wind reduced those caught in their path into bloody shreds. They pulled away from him and her pursued. They begged for mercy and he laughed. He lost his senses in the carnage and swept across the battlefield in a fit of rage, fury, and animalistic instinct to kill. The world around him became drowned out by his own thirst for carnage. Even when the Gordanians either lay dead at his feet or fleeing from him in terror and the Branks warriors came forward, he didn't stop. The rock-like golems were torn to pieces with only marginal more difficulty than their fodder troops had been. By now Naruto was lost. No longer registering anything around him as he killed and killed and killed. All things come to an end though. His rampage, like all others, soon ran low on fuel. The Branks withdrew and a new opponent stepped forward. A single person. A woman. Tall, blue-skinned with sharp teeth breaching just past her lips, she stepped forward and eyed Naruto with a measure of interest and disgust. Like looking down at a rodent wallowing in her garbage. If she spoke, Naruto couldn't hear her in his violent fugue state. The battle would have been one for the history books had he been aware of himself to properly respond. Driven as he was by instinct alone, though it was brief. A handful of exchanged blows before a sharp crack to the head fractured his helmet and sent him into unconsciousness. He wouldn't awaken again for a matter of days, strapped, blindfolded, and gagged in the belly of a Gordanian transport. Naruto awoke to the sound of shouting and an odd weightless feeling. Opening his eyes, he flinched slightly at the sudden bright light. Slowly cracking his eyelids, this time he realized that he was flying. Or more precisely, he was being carried on the back of Coriander as she did her best to try and avoid several Gordanians giving chase. "Ally Naruto, you have awoken. I'm glad. I was beginning to fear you would never wake again after that blow to your head. I did my best to render aid, but there were some survivors from the ship I had not realized. They are wearing armor and are armed now, unlike when I got the drop of them on board the ship. They have the advantage," Coriander said as she narrowly evaded a swipe from one of the Gordanian battle axes. "Get us to the ground somewhere. I'm still a little woozy and whatever they had me bound up with drained me of my power, but I have enough to put up a fight. Two of us is better than one anyway," Naruto said as he scanned the area. They were in some city. From the technology he could see they were a good couple of centuries behind his and Coriander's own peoples, let alone the citadel. Several tall glass and metal towers surrounded them and blocked his vision beyond them. "Coriander, where exactly are we?" Naruto asked as they descended toward a lower building's rooftop. "I do not know the planet. We landed in a forested area when we first arrived and your helmet rendered you unconscious. I tried to wake you, but soon the Gordanians were upon us and I tried to flee with you. They kept pace too well and chased me into the city. The natives seem an odd type," Coriander informed him as they sat down on the rooftop and Naruto drew his blades, ignoring the thin line of blood running down his forehead. "What do you mean an odd type?" Naruto asked as he watched the Gordanians circle up above. "Some fled normally, but many simply stood and watched. They are very stupid," Coriander answered, causing her companion to blink at her in surprise. They just watched as their city was destroyed and aliens battled in their sky. Naruto asked for confirmation. Yes. She answered succinctly before sending a set of green energy bolts at the boldest of the Gordanians as he swooped at them. Her attack seared his hide and knocked away some of his armor, but he simply hissed in pain and rejoined his comrades in the air. You're right, they do sound very stupid. Naruto replied. Was it possible they as a race lacked basic survival instincts? Their world must have been quite pleasant for them to evolve with such low abilities in risk assessment. Deciding to shrug off the confusing thought surrounding the people of this world, Naruto instead summoned up some of the little energy he had to slash outward with an arc of wind that severed the wing of one of the Gordanians. Naruto was upon him in the blink of an eye and he had jammed his left blade deep into his enemy's head through the eye before flipping backward as an odd projectile impacted where he had previously stood. Local authorities? Naruto asked Coriander. I do not know. It came from those individuals there. They had been watching us for some time from the bridge. She called back, shooting another Gordanian down with her bolts of energy, which Naruto quickly moved forward to finish, only to have to back off once more as another set of projectiles impacted his path. Rejoining Coriander near the center of the rooftop, he grimaced at the wave of nausea swept over him. A mixture of exhausting his energy reserves and his head injury. This was not good. Locals seemed to be siding with the Gordanians, and the few above them had no doubt sent for reinforcements the moment their escape pod had landed on this world. We can't keep this up. He said as he wobbled slightly only for Coriander to worriedly stabilize him. You should have stayed in your cells, Trox. One of the Gordanians howled as he rocketed toward them with the axe hefted over his head. Just as the axe was about to impact both of its intended victims, the Dragon Man was frozen in a black aura as a girl approached. She looked a year or two younger than Naruto and Coriander, though she seemed much smaller than either of them, barely reaching their chest in height. If he hadn't noticed the fact that she wasn't that much smaller than the fully grown members of the native species, he would have thought her to perhaps be a child based on height alone. As her cloak briefly lifted and she landed on the rooftop with them, he was pleased to notice she was very much not a child. Just short. Though he again supposed she wasn't that short as she was suddenly joined by the other individuals he suspected had been using the projectiles earlier. He couldn't outright blame them. Their home, a peaceful and vulnerable place as far as he could tell, was suddenly the battleground of aliens. Coriander moved forward to attack, but Naruto caught her arm. She glanced at him and he gave a reassuring smile causing her to turn her attention back to the handful of Gordanians above them. Like Coriander's people, Naruto's, even the lowly citizen caste, could learn a language by connecting their energy to that of another race. It wasn't perfect. He'd need to better learn the proper grammar and euphemisms as time went on, but it would allow a much easier means of communication. Holding out his fist after sheathing his blades, Naruto waited for the cloaked woman to step forward and tap it. Instead he was disappointed to find she simply stared at him with a dull look in her eyes. Really, an alien wants to fist bump me? She seemed to ask, not that he could comprehend a word of what she said. The green bird flitted beside her and suddenly transformed into an odd creature, shorter even than the other natives of this world. He also appeared physically very different. Long ears, green flesh and short thin body made him look like an outworlder much like himself. It was Naruto's hope that he could speak either Tamaranian or Hokkaian. Those hopes were dashed the moment he attempted to ask the boy to perform the bond with him. Even if the boy was an outworlder, it seemed he had little knowledge of the greater galaxy. Moving on to the next person, a larger man, around his same height with a mixture of biological and mechanical portions fused together. He, like the first two, seemed wary of connecting fists with Naruto, causing the Hokkaian to grow frustrated. Such cowardly idiotic people. Naruto growled, getting a small light laugh from Coriander as she continued to monitor the circling Gordanians. I told you, friend Naruto. They are a very stupid people. She said with some humor. Still they just stand there. How aggravating. Naruto complained, turning to the last two. The girl strode forward confidently while the boy tried to hold her back. They were both dressed oddly, though he wasn't sure of the customs of this world's people. They were far different in attire than the people that had watched a fight with the Gordanians from the streets below. The girl wore mostly dark-colored clothing with a black cloak trailing after her, though a bright yellow insignia spanned her chest, and her red hair contrasted brightly with her uniform. The boy was dressed in much brighter clothes with a yellow cloak and red uniform. The female finally extended her own hand and let out a quiet gasp as Naruto connected his fist to hers. He let what little energy he still possessed flow into her body and back again, eliciting a small shiver from her and a blush. Her reaction was interesting, but Naruto now had what he needed. Coriander, I assimilated their language, I can't give it to you in the same form, so you may have to, Naruto began to say as he turned back to his companion. Coriander simply leaned forward and pressed her lips to his, causing surprise to ripple between the others gathered on the rooftop. Naruto didn't resist, instead actually placing on hand gently on her hip as she pressed against him. It ended sooner than he would have liked, but still, few men would complain about locking lips with a Tamaranian princess even for a second. The fact that they'd held the act a little longer than was necessary sent feelings of pleasure through the princess herself, not that Naruto knew. Excellent, now let us greet one another before the Gordanians decide to attack once more. Coriander said, shocking the gathered natives. We had best hurry, they are waiting for reinforcements. It will not be long now until another Gordanian patrol craft arrives, and I have yet to recover my power fully. Naruto added in further surprising their audience. Wait, you can speak English now? The small green man asked. Yes, when I connected my hand with the female Anglian, I assimilated your language to a degree. Coriander did the same by kissing me just now. Naruto responded. As friend Naruto has said, I am Coriander, second princess of Tamarin. I thank you for your aid, Dark Anglian. Coriander said while nodding toward Raven, who still held a Gordanian captive in her magic. Though all she got from the others was confused looks. Yes, like Coriander said. Thank you, Dark One. Naruto said, either not noticing or ignoring the crestfallen look that passed through her eyes as he called her Dark One. Not that he did so in an attempt to offend or belittle her. She simply utilized the powers of darkness with ease and strength that was impressive. I am Lord Captain Naruto Uzumaki of the Beirian Vanguard, Hakanian Infantry. Though there no longer is a Beirian Vanguard, I suppose. His voice became bitter as he reached the end of his statement, and Coriander placed a hand onto his arm to support him. This day is so weird. Anyway, I'm Beast Boy, or well, that's what they all call me when I'm doing this stuff. The green one introduced himself, and the conversation became much easier after his awkward and friendly greeting. 20 minutes earlier. Why did you follow me here? Does Bruce not trust me to take care of myself? Batgirl, also known as Barbara Gordon, demanded to the brightly colored boy running along the rooftops beside her. I didn't even tell Bruce I was coming with you. Robin, or Grayson, Bruce Wayne's adoptive son, argued. Oh, so it's just you that thinks I can't take care of myself? She sniped. It's not like that. You and I only just started seeing each other and you decided to run off to Jump City. I just decided to do the same. Robin tried to argue. You had a full ride set up for Gotham University, she began. Well, now I have a full ride at Harbor View like you. We can both get away from Gotham for a while, go to school, fight Jump City gangs and thieves, it'll be great. He interrupted. I don't know if I want to go back to Gotham though, Robin. That was part of why I moved out here. You shouldn't have just tossed your life back home away and followed me here. If we really wanted to stay a couple, we could easily zeta a tube to visit one another whenever. It wouldn't even really be a long distance thing. Barbara explained. Well, yeah, but honestly I have been wanting out of Gotham for a while too. Was originally planning on Bloodhaven cause it was close enough to home, but when you told me you were coming to Jump City, I changed my mind. I'm even thinking of changing out of the red and yellow and taking on an actual name of my own. Especially since Bruce picked up Jason. I think he's going to start training him soon, and after that said with a bit of a conflicted tone. Batman will need the red and yellow back. She said with a bit of sympathy. It was different for Robin than it was for her. She was Batgirl on her own. She was out doing her own thing inspired by Batman before he ever brought her into partnership. Robin was a vengeful kid with acrobatic skills and no guardian. Bruce owned Robin, but she'd always be Batgirl. I guess I should be flattered, you know. I mean a sequel of me, Robin 2. The Revenge of the Boy Wonder. He bit out a chuckle that sounded more bitter than pleased. Either way, it'll be a couple years before Jason is ready for the uniform. So I need to do things separate from Bon in the meantime to prepare better for then. Continued, and both slipped into silence for a while. Finally Batgirl stopped and Robin settled in beside her. Thanks for coming with me, I guess I would have gotten lonely without any familiar faces around. She said before planting a kiss on his cheek. Of course, Barb. He grinned. His grin fell though as several bright lights streaked through the sky over Jump City and crashed into area just past the city's outskirts. Meteorites? Batgirl asked. Is it ever just meteorites? Robin asked back with a laugh as he shot out his grappling hook and took off along the rooftops in the direction of the crash. Batgirl followed soon after. About halfway there they stopped as a green falcon suddenly swooped down in front of them and transformed into a boy a few years younger than themselves. Oh wow. The real deal here in Jump City next to me. Ex-Doom Patrol member Beast Boy reporting for duty. Robin, sir. Batgirl, ma'am. The boy said with excitement as he snapped off an awkward salute. Robin replied at the sudden introduction. Nice to meet you, Beast Boy. Batgirl said while elbowing Robin in the ribs gently. Right, drop the sir and ma'am thing, by the way, it feels kinda weird. Robin threw in, getting a frantic nod from the younger boy. You got it, Robin. I mean you got it, Robin, just Robin. Beast Boy replied, firing off another shoddy salute. Alright, enough introductions. Let's move, those things crashed this way. Batgirl said and the group moved. Robin and Batgirl were back to free running, and this time Beast Boy had transformed into a hawk to get a literal bird's eye view of their targets. Again they had only gotten a short ways when another teen literally fell into their path. Robin knew him, if only by reputation. Victor Stone was a pretty well-known hero outside of the league, he worked with them from time to time, but for the most part wasn't considered one of them because he preferred his loner status. Cyborg, as Victor was known when doing hero work, rolled to his feet almost the same moment he impacted the pavement. His teeth were grinding together as he swung an armor out and his robotic limb reconfigured itself into a humming cannon. "Think you can just smash up my town, lizard boy?" He barked before blasting the charging alien figure in the chest with a blue shot of energy. The alien slammed backward from the impact and crashed into a small newsstand and twitched but didn't move to get up again. "And stay down this time," Cyborg hollered before looking over his shoulder at the other three heroes. "Batgirl and Robin and whoever you are." "Beast Boy." The green boy chirped happily, pleased to be included. "Right, is Batman here?" Cyborg asked. "No, just us," Robin replied. Whatever. Watch yourselves. These lizard dudes pack a serious punch and can take a beating and keep coming," Cyborg explained. "Did it come from whatever those lights were earlier?" Batgirl asked. "Yeah, some sort of pod. This one came after me while the others from the pod I found all went toward the outskirts of town," he replied. "That's where all those others landed at," Beast Boy said. "We had better hurry then. If this is some sort of half-baked invasion we just became the first line of defense." Robin spoke with steel in his voice. The group nodded and raced toward the outskirts, only to stop as suddenly several walls near them exploded with green blasts of energy. An alien woman, a beautiful alien woman carrying a handsome alien man on her back shot past them shouting out in some odd gruff alien tongue. Easily a dozen of the lizard aliens gave chase, their own weapons doing just as much damage to the city around them as her green energy attacks did. "We really need to put an end to this before they harm too many people," Batgirl shouted and the four heroes changed direction to chase the group of aliens together. They pushed to their best ability, but being as only Beast Boy could fly they struggled slightly. Thankfully when they saw the unconscious male wake up the two humanoid aliens settled into a rooftop, letting them stop on a nearby overpass to catch their breath. "So, plan?" Cyborg asked Robin and Batgirl who had seemed to be sharing the leadership role of their little crew. "We still don't know what's going on," Batgirl answered. "It looks like those two are trying to escape from the lizard aliens. Maybe we should help them," Robin said, though his gaze was centered more on the woman causing Batgirl to narrow her own eyes at him. "Maybe they are fugitive criminals. They could be mass murderers or something," she scolded Robin, causing him to frown at her. "You think they are mass murderers?" Beast Boy asked, having paled slightly to a mint green color. "Well no, but we can't be too sure." Batgirl trailed off as they saw the male alien use some sort of wind-based attack to remove the wing of one of the lizard men, sending him crashing to the rooftop below. Then he seemed to flash forward at speeds none of them could easily follow. They grimaced when he drove his knife into the lizard's eye, clearly killing it immediately. Batgirl immediately reacted and launched a pair of batarangs at the man, sending him flipping back over to his colleague. "Either way we need to stop them before they all kill each other or a civilian," Robin stated. Just as he spoke he let loose his own projectiles as the male again moved forward to kill another of the lizard men that the female had shot down with her green energy. They impacted just in front of him, forcing him back beside the alien female. "Yeah, that's great and all, but how do we do that?" Cyborg asked. "Perhaps fighting isn't the answer. Maybe we can negotiate with them," another voice chimed in. The group turned to look at the newcomer before she slipped into a shadow and appeared floating above the fighting aliens just in time to stop one of the attacking lizard men with strange shadow-like powers. Glancing between one another the group decided to head down and join the girl mostly hidden under her cloak. The female alien seemed to move forward to attack only to be stopped by the male who calmed her down with a look and smile. She grunted softly and turned her attention skyward to the lizard people holding position above as if waiting for something. The male then sheathed his blades and slowly, cautiously stepped forward with one hand outstretched in a fist. "Really, an alien wants to fist bump me?" the cloaked girl asked with a dull tone and flat stare directed toward the alien. As Beast Boy transformed beside her the alien then offered his fist toward the younger boy, causing him to stare at the blonde alien as well. Sighing disappointedly he then moved on to Cyborg, who took a half step back from the visitor, causing him to grumble angrily in his alien language, eliciting a soft peak of laughter from his female companion. Whatever he said Cyborg knew it was an insult and clenched a fist as the alien stepped away from him. "Enough of this, we're getting nowhere." Barbara though as she stepped forward to tap her hand against the blonde's only for to briefly grab her wrist and try to pull her back. Gently shaking herself free she finally offered her own fist out to the man letting him briefly tap his knuckles to hers. The oddest wave of energy seemed to run through her body. It was warm but pleasant, and she had to stifle the slight moan that threatened to break free as it swept over her sensitive regions. As soon as it started, it stopped and he retracted his hand, acting as if nothing had just happened. That girl did her best to force down the light blush she suddenly had and refocus on the situation at hand. Her attention was easily returned to the aliens then as the male began to speak, only to be cut off by the woman suddenly kissing him. Neither would ever admit it to the other, but both Batgirl and Robin briefly felt jealousy spike through their beings, only to tamp it down harshly. It didn't make sense to feel that emotion after all. Both could agree the aliens were extremely attractive and built in ways that would make Olympic athletes as green as Beast Boy and Envy. Still, they had their own relationship and knew nothing of these beings. Excellent, now let us greet one another before the Gordanians decide to attack once more. The female alien said, getting a nod from her companion. The 5 heroes were stunned at the ease she now spoke English. It was heavily accented and a little stiff in delivery, like this woman was used to very formal patterns of speech. We had best hurry, they are waiting for reinforcements. It will not be long now until another Gordanian patrol craft arrives, and I have yet to recover my power fully. The male added. Wait, you can speak English now? Beast Boy asked. Yes, when I connected my hand with the female Anglian, I assimilated your language to a degree. Coriander did the same by kissing me just now. The male responded. As friend Naruto has said, I am Coriander, second princess of Tamarin. I thank you for your aid, Dark Anglian. Coriander said while nodding toward Raven, who still held a lizard man captive. Anglian? All of the heroes thought collectively in confusion. Yes, like Coriander said. Thank you, Dark One. The one named Naruto said. None of them noticed the slightest flinch from Raven or the hurt look that passed through her eyes at the moniker. I am Lord Captain Naruto Uzumaki of the Berian Vanguard, Hakanian Infantry. Though there no longer is a Berian Vanguard, I suppose. His voice became bitter as he reached the end of his statement, and Coriander placed a hand onto his arm to support him. The heroes frowned slightly at that. Obviously they should have realized he was in the military based on his armor and weapons. Still, the way he spoke sounded like he had lost a lot of friends recently. The heroes knew better than to pry at the moment, though both Batgirl and Robin planned to get the information out of him eventually. This day is so weird. Anyway, I'm Beast Boy, or well, that's what they all call me when I'm doing this stuff. Beast Boy introduced himself. With him breaking the awkward air, the rest of the group quickly followed with introducing themselves before Robin stepped forward to Naruto and asked the important question. Why are you all here? And why are they chasing you? He asked simply, and Naruto stared back into the masked visage of the younger boy for a time before exhaling softly and looking up at the waiting Gordanians. The Gordanians are the main body of soldiers for the Citadel. A brutal empire that seems to conquer the Vega system and its sister sector, the Vera system. Of the nearly 30 inhabitable worlds within that region, 22 have fallen to the Citadel's expansion. Those still independent are Tamarin, Hakania, and the colonies, though the colony of Burr will likely fall soon if it is not yet. Naruto explained. I have been a prisoner of the Gordanians in exchange for peace for my people for the last 6 years. Friend Naruto was recently captured after the Gordanians launched a new invasion of Burr. Coriander added in. Coriander freed me while the Gordanians were vulnerable and disabled their ship. Sadly, these ships usually travel in pairs and their comrades will soon arrive with many more Gordanians than this. Naruto further explained. As if to support his words, a purplish tear suddenly appeared in the sky and a long odd-shaped ship slowly slid through. They have come. Coriander said as she lifted up off the ground and began prepping bolts of energy. Naruto drew his blades and readied himself for battle as well. The heroes all stilled and looked up at the ship suddenly overshadowing the city. Whether they wished to or not, they were about to be dragged into this war themselves. We must disable the Gordanian ship if we hope to have a chance at victory. Naruto said as he sent a barrage of wind blades at the emboldened Gordanians that had begun to rush at the adolescents gathered on the rooftop. Unlike the thin one earlier, this set was thicker and sharper. It shredded through the charging attackers, causing the heroes to grimace. Raven waved her hand and the prisoner she'd been holding simply vanished, getting a few glances. What happened to that one? Beast Boy asked, though he was a bit nervous to do so. He's alive. Was all she said before joining Naruto and Coriander in moving to assault the Gordanian ship. The others joined in, however they seemed to be hardly making a scratch as the ship slowly turned its broadside toward them, revealing a side bristling with guns. Naruto. Robin called out. You've fought these things before, how did you destroy them? They are weak to detonations along their central hull, both ends of the ship are larger than the middle. We would use the warrior caste as distractions using missile launchers, while a team of superiors would get inside their shields to plant explosives. Naruto answered as he frowned at the sight of several Gordanians beginning to swarm out of the ship's hangar bay. Then we do the same thing. Robin said with determination. Cyborg, keep bombarding that thing's shields with your cannon. Naruto, Coriander, and Raven focus on the Gordanians and give us an opening. Batgirl, Beast Boy, and I will go up and plant charges. Go. Robin ordered. Naruto found himself impressed by the boy. He had obvious leadership skills. Actually, Naruto had noticed of those present seemed to be skilled warriors and leaders, though he considered himself, Robin, Batgirl, and Coriander above the rest in that regard. The group split up, racing to their designated tasks. Naruto carved his way through the Gordanians sent his way while Coriander hovered nearby, blasting away at the enemy. Raven seemed a nightmare made flesh for the Gordanians as her powers overshadow and trapped and either killed or disappeared the Gordanian soldiers with ease. Cyborg's cannon blasts, followed by his own taunts and shouts of booyah, echoed around the dockyard they had confronted the ship in. Naruto had lost sight of the others for a time, but the sudden blasts along the middle of the ship's length confirmed they had succeeded in the plan. The craft tilted heavily to the side, then a terrible screech of metal, followed by a deafening explosion that shattered the ship into a half-dozen pieces. For a moment Naruto feared the worst for his new comrades. To sacrifice oneself for their people's victory was as noble as one could be. When he saw the figures of a large green bird and two bipedal figures gliding down using their cape, he smiled. This force was far from the normal fare of troops Naruto faced on the front lines. Gordanian society pushed the smallest and weakest as well as the dumbest into roles such as prisoner keeping or piloting. Still, for this little group of natives to stand with him and Coriander and come out victorious with no notable casualties was remarkable. With himself and Coriander as off being the rough hallmark for a Hykanian superior, only Cyborg similarly fit the role. Even then he was more like Naruto's friend Rock Lee, an uplifted member of the warrior caste, augmented to seem near to the level of a naturally born superior. Raven was something else. She was most akin to a priestess or even perhaps a member of the royal caste, with the ease she utilized her power. Robin and Batgirl, while weaker physically than the warrior caste that Naruto knew, he couldn't imagine them in any caste besides that. The last member of their odd little group, Beast Boy, didn't easily fit into the Hykanian caste system. He was most like the alien auxiliaries that they occasionally employed to fulfill a specific combat function. Still, the boy was eager and very strong in his own ways. They actually made a surprisingly good team, and Naruto felt pleased to not be the one burdened with the role of leader for once. He felt responsible for the safety of the others to an extent, especially for Coriander, but he could only chalk that up as his nature to protect those around him to his best ability. The small team congratulated one another and cheered in victory for a brief time. Naruto enjoyed the elated embrace from the princess. Sadly, it was short-lived as a roar of rage from the wreckage of the Gordanian ship caught the group's attention. That sounded like no ordinary Gordanian. Naruto whispered to Coriander, who sent him an unsure shrug. She might have had more access to the ship than Naruto had, but she was still a prisoner and most of the vessel was restricted to her. Any ideas what that is? Robin asked the pair. Judging from the roar, it sounds almost like Naruto began only to see the hulking monstrosity that was the commander of the two destroyed ships, RIP his way out of some burning wreckage. A hybrid? Coriander whispered in legitimate fear. Branks and Gordanian to be exact. This will be a problem. Naruto said with worry. What's the big deal? He's just bigger than all the others. Beast Boy commented. No, his hide is like stone, and his strength will be greater than any of us could normally handle, plus Naruto began before tackling Raven, out of the way of a blast of yellow energy from the staff that the beast carried. He is well armed. Coriander finished for him. The group hesitated briefly as the hulking beast closed the distance between them. Only briefly though before they all jumped into action. Naruto knew he couldn't hold back anymore and caught Coriander by the arm. She was confused by him stopping her but listened to him. No offense to the others, princess, but you are the only one among them I find myself fully trusting yet. I am going to use the last of my energy to kill the enemy, but afterward I will fall into a coma-like state. It's shameful to ask, but Naruto was once more cut off, but this time it was by Coriander herself. You have nothing to worry about. I will watch over you. You have my word, friend Naruto. She said with a smile before launching a rapid series of blasts at the enemy and lifting up into the air. Alright, that is it then. Naruto said before taking a series of leveling breaths and reaching deep within himself to grasp the last traces of his energy. An aura of flickering flame and crackling energy soon swirled around him, increasing in intensity until suddenly the aura simply seemed to snap and disappear. Upon opening his eyes though, the slitted blues he previously had were replaced by pure blue light. The Hykanian superior let out a primal roar of his own and launched at the hybrid beast, connecting roughly with it in midair and slamming both to the ground. He didn't have the energy to keep this berserker state up for long, so Naruto hit the creature with everything he had to keep the fight short. That was the last thing he remembered until waking up nearly 2 weeks later in a strange room. Clearly an infirmary of some sort with Coriander sleeping in a chair beside his bed. So you've agreed to join their team? Naruto asked. The Tamaranian nodded her head. Partly in exchange for giving you medical care, but also because I don't want to go home. My sister sold me to the Gordanians for peace, but it didn't matter in the end. I don't want to return, and them believe it was because of my resistance that the war began again. The princess explained. That would be understandable. I am sure that my people believe me to be dead, I am hesitant to return to them as well. At least immediately. Naruto replied, simply tired of the endless war that encompassed the entire existence of the superior caste. Yes. So I have chosen to stay here. I have even taken on a name to fit in with the team. The English form of my name is Starfire, so I took it as my own. Coriander, no, Starfire said with a small smile. Perhaps you would like to stay with them, and me as well. Earth is a curious place. The team also seems very kind. They asked for nothing in return for helping deal with the Gordanians and providing us shelter. She seemed to be shifting more towards selling the idea of Naruto staying with them. Coriander, I want to stay, but my responsibility, Naruto trailed off. You have already died for them once before, besides if I am not mistaken you owe me a life debt, correct? Coriander said with a sharper tone than he had heard her use with him before. True. He said simply, eyeing the princess oddly. Well then, until you have fulfilled your debt you are to remain by my side and help the people of Earth. It is possible the Citadel may return here to investigate their lost ships after all. We would be responsible for the death of several people. She pressed on. You don't need to guilt me into it, princess. You're right on all accounts though. So I think it's best that I stay as well. Naruto said, planning to continue talking only to be interrupted by the form of Coriander practically jumping into the narrow medical bed with him. He couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of his situation. He didn't dare complain, even mentally, though. Who in their right mind would bemoan being held closely by such a shapely beauty as the Tamaranian princess? Not him. It was of course at this moment the rest of the team they had worked with entered the room. Several did their best to hide blushes, though Cyborg simply chuckled and nodded approvingly, while Beast Boy let out a sharp wolf whistle at the party, though the meaning was completely lost on them. Do we need to come back later? Batgirl quickly asked as she began pulling Robin and by extension the others out of the room. No, it is all fine. I am just elated that friend Naruto will be staying on Earth as well. Coriander said cheerfully. That's great, Starfire. How did you convince him? Batgirl replied. She guilted me into it. I reminded him that he owes me his life. The pair of aliens said at the same time. My teachers once informed me that to acquire a life debt from a Hekanian superior is one of the greatest boons one can have in the Vegas system, though we are no longer in the Vegas system I imagine that it still applies. Starfire answered. It does. Either way you also made a good point about the Gordanians. Should they return I will have to eliminate them quickly so that the Citadel does not turn its sights on your undefended and easy to conquer planet. Naruto answered unknowingly causing the Earthlings to be rather confused. Oh, friend Naruto, no, I found out they actually have a large organization that has even fought off the parademons of Apocalypse. Many could even easily kill you and I, such as the Superman. Starfire explained. Truly? Naruto asked in surprise. Perhaps we were wrong, Coriander, perhaps they are not as simple a people as first assumed. Still though they must be mighty protectors if the commoners simply point and stare at invading Gordanians. We really need to catch them up on everything about Earth before we do any actual crime fighting as a team. Robin said with a sigh. It's totally worth it though, I mean did you see them? They could totally kick butt. Beast Boy added in as they watched the Tamaranian give a very poor explanation about Earth and its customs. The Hekanian soaked up the bad information like a sponge, nodding along to each of Starfire's words, slowly worrying some of the more mature team members they would be working with. Maybe, but we need to talk to them about the way they fight. Naruto outright killed those Gordanians without a second thought and Starfire looked like she had no issue with it either. Robin said. We'll get there. Like you said, we have a lot of ground to cover before we are up and running. Plus a couple others want in now that we are officially forming a group. Batgirl replied. Hey, I just thought of something, what is Naruto's Earth name if Starfire's is Starfire? Beast Boy asked. That's what you're worried about right now? Raven asked. I wouldn't really say worried so much as curious. The green boy responded with a bright grin, getting an eye roll from the girl. Oncoming storm. Naruto called over. What? They asked, realizing he was talking to them. By Earth name. It would be oncoming storm, or more literally fear the oncoming tempest of heaven. My mother is a high priestess, and my father's name is Take Heart the Tempest Rages Anew. Or Raging Storm, Minato. But well, that is a large amount of words for you, so maybe you can just call me Storm Superior, as I am of the superior caste. It would be fitting. Naruto explained. You could hear our whole conversation, couldn't you? Raven asked. You are still in the same room as us. Naruto plainly replied. They are a simple people. Starfire said matter-of-factly. The team left shortly after that. Unsure how to feel about being indirectly called dumb, but in the most inoffensive and unintentional way they could imagine. They also had much work to do if they wanted to get their new hero team up and running. Starfire also left Naruto to rest for some time. The blonde lay back down thinking of his home. He had served his purpose. He had few friends left alive, and his mates had long passed. His father and nearly all his kin were likewise dead. His mother, he'd only even met a handful of times as she was locked away in the divination's cloister. Here though, he could already see a bond forming with Coriander, perhaps given time even with the other members of this team. I am better off here for now. He thought aloud before letting himself drift back to sleep. Even after such a long time on bed rest, he had strained his inner systems too hard to do much more than rest. Naruto, soon to be known publicly as Superior Storm or just Superior, stared at his scarred and damaged armor with a frown. He planned to continue using the armor in his new life here in Jump City, but he needed to make repairs. The most heavily damaged portion was his helmet. The face section had broken off the rest of the way, and the helmet was now in two pieces. It was the first piece that needed attention, but the suit as a whole needed not only to be fixed, but cosmetically altered before he and the team could do real hero work, as Robin and the others called it. As it stood, the team wasn't ready to make their debut anyway. Far too much remained to be done with the tower itself, let alone establishing the team as a whole. However, today was a very large step toward making themselves an official team of superheroes, again as Robin and the others called them. The Teen Titans, a name that had already been chosen before Naruto woke much to his chagrin, were gathering on the roof as Naruto packed away his items in his room. He'd have to hurry and catch up to them before the new arrivals began to show up. Shrugging off the multitude of memories that rose up when he looked upon his equipment, Naruto finished putting the items away and quickly left his room to head up the stairs to the rooftop landing platform. It didn't take long. He and Starfire had chosen rooms across from one another only one floor below the roof access hallway. They were somewhat separated from the others on the team due to that placement, but Starfire and Naruto had already discovered they had a shared love of quiet places in high locations. The pair often simply sat and enjoyed the sight of Jump City across the bay. Sunsets had been Naruto's favorites, while Starfire had a preference for twilight just after the sun had slipped behind the horizon. He could understand that. The city's lights lit up just as the sky was beginning to darken and the stars came out. For a brief moment both the lights and stars reflected off the waters of the bay in such a way that it looked like bursting fireworks. Currently though it was late morning. The sun was already climbing toward its zenith and Naruto had to briefly shield his eyes from the brightness as he left the tower to join his new team. As his eyes adjusted he caught Starfire excitedly hovering around the rest of the team. She wasn't the only one. Beast Boy was clearly ecstatic to meet his new teammates. The boy shifted repeatedly between different animals, mostly birds, as he circled Cyborg. Naruto was impressed with Cyborg's patience. He handled Beast Boy without any sign of issue and if anything was easily drawn into the younger boy's excitement. They were a somewhat unlikely friendship in Naruto's opinion, but it was clear both boys had come to really enjoy one another's presence. It also helped that, even though both seemed to wind the other up for some of the most humorous moments Naruto had witnessed in his brief time on Earth so far, they also kept one another grounded in a way. Stopping one another from delving too far into their own personality quirks, such as Beast Boy's hyperactive need for attention and Cyborg's pull toward a loner lifestyle. After all, while Cyborg gave Beast Boy an outlet for his energy in a positive and friendly manner, Beast Boy's attention-grabbing ways kept the elder boy from simply burrowing himself deep into his lab here at the tower. Raven floated a small distance away from the rest of the group. While Cyborg seemed to be shedding his loner mentality, Raven likely never would. Naruto and Starfire both had commented to one another that the girl was hard to understand so far. Despite that, Naruto was certain Raven was the most powerful member of the team outside himself and Starfire, though where exactly the princess and sorceress stacked up against one another he had yet to figure out. Either way she seemed kind, if somewhat guarded and blunt. She reminded him of many of his fellow superiors in the Hykanian military that specialized in the solitary missions behind enemy lines. The main difference was they had all been trained to guard their emotions and personalities. Raven appeared to have suffered somehow to lead to a similar position. Sadly Naruto wondered if he would ever understand her truly at all. She wasn't cold to him or Starfire, but he knew when he was being avoided. The last two members of the team had essentially taken over as the leaders of the group. Batgirl and Robin were doing more than adequate in their roles so far. Batgirl had primarily organized the team's repairs and cleaning of the tower, as well as the delegation of duties within the tower. Robin on the other hand was hard at work taking inventory of their equipment and funds. Where they got funds the boy hadn't shared, but they had to come from somewhere. Robin also seemed to be the one to assume more overarching command of the team in actual fights and missions. At least he had when they had done their small handful of drills. Unfortunately, the training room and the drones that went with it were not complete and would need some time still before they would be ready for team scenarios. Small-scale individual tests were available at the moment though, so each team member was given a time slot to work on things at least twice a week, thanks to Robin's work with programming scenarios into the drones. "Friend Naruto." Starfire called before zipping over to him to float along beside him. "I had worried you might forget our new comrades were arriving today. I was just putting some things away in my quarters, Cory." "No need to worry." Naruto reassured her. The pair of aliens had become very close. After all, they had more in common and shared similar difficulties in adjusting to Earth. "I see. This is most exciting, yes." Friend Batgirl had said we will be getting closer to actually acting as a hero team. "Yes, plus she and Robin have kept the new arrival's identity secret. I'm curious who will be joining us. Plus this means we are closer to be doing something outside of the Titan Tower." Naruto replied. "You are growing restless as am I, however Batgirl did say we do not know anything of the native culture. It could be difficult for us to interact." Coriander said in a thoughtful tone. "All the more reason for us to go and experience Jump City, right?" Naruto asked. The girl hummed thoughtfully, but the conversation ended as they joined the others. Almost as soon as he did, a crack in the air drew his attention to the landing platform. A bright flash of light and suddenly a lanky boy in a yellow uniform decorated with lightning bolts appeared on the roof. After briefly stumbling, he righted himself and quickly glanced at the others before waving a hand playfully. "Yo, what's up everybody?" the boy said as he regained his bearings. "How did you get the League to okay letting you use the Zeta beam for transport to the tower?" "We didn't, they just didn't realize Robin changed his codes rather than hand the real ones over," Batgirl said, though her tone was less reprimanding and more smug. "Ah, classic anyway, I'm a couple minutes early, but let's do introductions," the boy said before blurring and appearing beside Starfire. "Hey there, name's Kid Flash, pleased to meet you, what's your hero name?" "Angel." "Princess." "Something like that." Kid Flash introduced himself, catching Starfire off guard, though she did her level best to give a friendly smile and polite exchange. "You may call me Starfire." She began gliding backward from the boy slightly as he was a little more invasive of her personal space than she was entirely comfortable with. "Kid, stop harassing her." Batgirl snapped, snagging the boy by the nape of his neck and directing him away from Starfire. Naruto's face had taken on an odd expression. He recognized his feelings at the time. He needed to speak with Coriander soon, it seemed. Still, it was best to try and start off on a good foot with a new member. "Greetings." Naruto extended a hand for the boy to shake, as appeared to be the norm here on Earth, or at least among these heroes. "Oh, hey." Kid Flash said, wincing and biting back a whimper as the steel trap that was Naruto's hand crushed his own. "I am Superior Storm, though my name is also Naruto. Starfire and I are both non-Englians," Naruto said with a warm smile. "Englians?" Kid Flash asked as he finally managed to free his hand. "Yes, it is the name of your people, correct? You are Englians. You speak English," Naruto explained. "What? No, who told you that?" "No one told them that, they have an odd ability to learn things by fist bumping," Batgirl explained. "Really?" He turned and extended his fist towards Starfire. "I cannot do that. Naruto can because he is a Hakanian superior. I am Tamaranian," Starfire explained. "Ah, well that's disappointing," Kid Flash said. He brightened back almost immediately and turned to the group. "Well, I know Robin and Batgirl from before. I know Starfire and Naruto now too," so he began waving for the others to speak. "You can call me Cyborg," the eldest of the teens said as he stepped forward and bumped fists with Kid Flash. "I can't learn from it, but that's still my greeting," he said to the yellow-clad kid, getting a snort of humor. "I'm Beast Boy," the youngest in the group chirped happily. "Raven is the second one going to be late," Raven said flatly, not all that happy to be doing a meet and greet. Especially now that Kid Flash seemed to have noticed there was in fact a girl beneath the cloak. The group turned to where Kid Flash had appeared from the Zeta beam transport, but there were no signs that a second person was coming in the same fashion. "Actually, I think our last member is taking things a little more old school. He turned down the Zeta beam I offered him. He's flying instead," Robin told the collected group. "Wait, so then why aren't we headed downstairs? I need to find my room and could really use a chance to refuel," Kid Flash said. "They'll be here. Actually, look," Robin said as he pointed off into the distance over the bay. The team all turned to look off the edge of the tower toward whatever it was that was slowly growing larger in the distance. As the last member of their team neared, Naruto hummed in thought. "Starfire, that armor," Naruto said in his native Hakanian. "Yes, it is similar to your people's but also foreign. Is this other team member a visitor to Earth like us?" Starfire replied in the same tongue. "I don't think so." Perhaps Earth has more interaction with other planets than we thought. You did say the Justice League had Green Lanterns among their ranks after all. Naruto replied. The SST. A small voice hissed beside the pair of aliens, causing them to turn their attention to Beast Boy. What are you guys saying? He asked in a whisper that was too loud to really be considered a whisper. It's not really that important. It might be private too. Naruto said to the younger boy, trying to avoid coloring expectations or opinions of their final member. After all, he and Starfire could be wrong, and the design could just be advanced enough that it didn't fit with the typical look of Anglian's technology. You two can be weird. Beast Boy said. Though it was mostly because he felt put out for not being part of the conversation. Naruto snorted slightly but patted the boy's head, causing him to send Naruto an odd look. Being weird is good for you. Naruto chuckled, causing the younger boy to blink before a more reserved grin appeared on his face. By the time the trio had turned back to the group, the blue armored figure had come in for a landing. He was more physically imposing than Kid Flash had been, though Naruto wondered how much of that was the armor he wore and how much was the newcomer's actual build. His armor was somewhat insectoid as he stepped forward, and Cyborg nodded. Clearly the pair had met in the past. Robin also stepped forward with a friendly smile and extended hand. Robin had been in charge of the two newcomers joining after all, so it was expected that they would know one another. Eyes, this is Blue Beetle. Batgirl introduced as she clearly knew him prior to him joining the team. Robin went down the line introducing each of the others. Blue Beetle was more reserved and polite than Kid Flash had been, and Naruto took to the other boy more easily than he expected. I must ask. Are you like Starfire and myself? Naruto asked as the group made their way toward the door. What do you mean? The mechanical voice asked for clarification. Are you a native of Earth? Naruto asked more clearly. Oh. The boy said before his helmet whirred with a light mechanical hum before the helmet folded and retracted to reveal the face of a boy around Kid Flash's and Robin's age. Ah, I expected that but still wanted to see. Naruto said. No problem. Jamie Reyes, what's your name besides Storm Superior? The now properly named Jamie asked. Naruto. The pair shook hands as they walked. So you and Starfire are real-life aliens then? I've met a couple but not usually nice ones. You've met more of our kind? Naruto asked in surprise. Well, not really your kind so much as other aliens. Like from other planets. Jamie explained. I know. I am just surprised. Does Earth have frequent alien incursions? Naruto asked. Yeah. I haven't dealt with that many, but like I said, you aren't trying to take over Earth or eat people or anything, so it's kind of nice. The boy said easily. Ah, I appreciate you Anglians not trying to eat me either. Naruto sent a friendly smile showing his bright white fang teeth to the younger teen. There, oh yeah, Jamie said awkwardly. Wait Anglians. Don't ask, I'll explain it to both of them later. Let's go eat first. Batgirl said as she led the group to the dining room. Food? Sounds great to me. Kid Flash said as they all found seats. Not all of the kitchen appliances are up and running, so I had some pizzas ordered. They got here like 5 minutes before you guys did, so they are still hot. Robin explained as they began parting out the food. Naruto and Starfire were both a bit enthralled by the food. Starfire had been living on what amounted to scraps and flavorless nutrition packs for nearly 6 years, and Naruto had rarely if ever had a meal that wasn't the ration packs given to him since he began training in the academy as a little boy. This is called pizza? Naruto asked. I think they said pizza, Starfire attempted. Close, but you're emphasizing the wrong part of the word. Try pizza. Batgirl pointed out. The pair of aliens attempted the proper pronunciation a few times before joining their teammates and digging in. Both hummed thoughtfully before shifting ever so slightly forward as if becoming protective of their plates. As time continued on, they became more guarded and protective of their food, eating ravenously and even picking at the crumbs. The pair only stopped themselves short of literally licking the plates. The pizza is delicious. Starfire cheered happily. Bro, I have such a confusing. Kid Flash began while staring at Starfire as she licked the remnants of some cheese and sauce off her fingers. He was interrupted by Batgirl elbowing him. It is much better than what I'm used to as well. It reminds me of Duro cakes. Naruto said as he finished his 5th slice. Robin was suddenly very glad he ordered extra. It seemed most of this team had very high metabolism and therefore very large appetites. Duro cakes? Beast Boy asked. Oh, we have them on Tamarin as well. Duro are large reptiles raised for food by people in the Vera and Vega systems. They are very cute but also very delicious. Starfire explained. For Hykanians, they are one of the staples in our diet. Well, for most classes. The citizen caste and most of the warrior caste eat Duro meat often. The royal caste too, I suppose. We only get it occasionally in the superior caste after we become adults because the ration kits are more efficient for providing all the needs from a meal. Naruto explained. That sounds unfair. Raven said thoughtfully. An entire class of people only given ration packs instead of true meals. Naruto simply shrugged. It was how things were done. How they had always been done. I have some rations with me. Naruto said as he drew out a small package. It was roughly the size of his palm and round-shaped. The boy set it on the table and popped off the lid to reveal 3 small compartments. In the largest section an object that looked like a cookie wrapped in a nearly see-through white packaging sat. In the 2 smaller compartments were a small package of pills and a small package of powder. Wait, is that your whole meal? Cyborg asked in shock. Yes. However, appearances can be deciding. This package may be small, but it holds all the calories and nutrients a Helghian superior needs for a day. Naruto explained, causing the other to take a second glance. It's just a cookie. Beast Boy said, still stunned. Here. Naruto said as he broke the ration cake into several bite-sized pieces and handed them out to his teammates. The Titans glanced between one another before popping it into their mouths. They chewed cautiously before their faces turned a mix of red and green except for Starfire. Oh. They taste just like Duro cakes. She cheered. Yes, well they are not much to look at, the rations we are given are usually very high quality. They are made to taste like dishes from home or our childhoods. Naruto happily said. Almost like he was proud of the rations. The others forced the food down before chazzing it with drinks and gasping for air. It was like eating a dry piece of bread that tasted like sour pickles and buffalo sauce with a habanero heat. Beast Boy had tears in his eyes as he sniffled and tried his best to rest his tongue. Sadly, even after drinking his soda it wasn't enough. How did that pepperoni pizza taste anything like this? What's wrong with you? Jamie asked in horror. I just meant it was mild like Duro cakes. Most of my people's food has some spice to it. This pizza is very good for being so bland. Naruto commented. The Titans cringed at the thought of what the rest of the meals for Helghians and Tamaranians were like. Barbara whispered to his girlfriend. Remind me to never let either of them cook for the team. No problem. Batgirl whispered back. The group transitioned into friendly conversation from there. A lot of questions and answers as they got to know one another better. Before long they had turned to telling stories of their past. Mostly funny ones from their childhoods. Kid Flash happily talked about his family and how he acquired his powers. He introduced his true name, Wally West, and did his best to help Batgirl explain that no, they were not called Anglians, they were Americans who lived in the United States of America and spoke English. The explanation that the English were British just spawned more questions that the pair of teens decided weren't imperative for Naruto and Starfire to know. The stories shared also helped to explain a few things about the cultures each member of the new team came from. Robin, who revealed only his given name, had evidently been a member of a nomadic band of entertainers when he was very young. He didn't go into specifics, but evidently he and his family were all known for their acrobatic skill, which Batgirl or Barbara had vouched for. Naruto had been happy to hear about the shows Robin and his kinsman had participated in. He and Starfire both had been excited to see one in the future as promised by an awkward Robin and a giggling Batgirl. Batgirl was among the most interesting for Naruto. The girl came from a family of law enforcement. She, hadn't specified where or how long, but she had said that her father was a career member of law enforcement for one of Earth's most important cities. The way she described her father reminded him of his own, if a little less militant than Minato had been. The others had been very interested in hearing about his and Starfire's lives. They seemed to regret that after they began telling their stories. Naruto had known the people of Earth to be more emotionally attuned than he felt was necessary, but the amount of empathy and sadness at the lives he and his fellow alien had lived just served to prove that his new friends were too emotionally open at times. He hoped it wouldn't interfere or worse yet somehow be used against them. Wait, so Star, you were a slave? Beast Boy asked with a horrified look. Yes, the Gordanians are also known as slavers. Starfire said somewhat sullenly. That is in the past. I owe you my own freedom and life for not only freeing me, but saving me from the ship crash. You will never be chained again. Naruto declared with a serious tone. But that question and the answers that followed, the mood had changed to a morbid one. Robin knew that sitting silently at the table with mopey expressions wasn't good for any of them. It was a perfect opportunity to unveil the progress he had recently made. Alright, so let's head downstairs. I have something to show you all. Robin said, sharing a grin with Cyborg. The team followed the 2 tech-savvy boys below. The elevator ride to some sort of surprise was enough to stir the group spirits once again. They chattered animatedly, especially the more lively members, Beast Boy, Starfire, and Kid Flash. Once in the sub-basement, Robin led the group to a large set of doors at the end of a short hallway, with a pair of smaller doors on either wall. Each one was labeled for what lay behind it. The side doors bore white stenciled words that said observation deck. That was obvious enough what they were for. The large door, however, had sprawled across it the word scenario room. Above the door was a pair of lights, one red and one green. The green was currently glowing, showing the room to be empty and safe. This is the scenario room. Everyone has been using a portion of it for basic testing so far. It wasn't ready for team training yet. Robin explained. Robin and I got it up and running fully this morning though. Now we can start really working on stuff as a team. Cyborg said with a grin. Exactly. Come on. Robin said as he led the group inside. Wally let out a whistle at the sight before them. A massive cavernous room made up of hexagonal panels on the walls, floor, and ceiling. Beyond that it was featureless. A massive empty room. Well, this is cool and all, but when you said you two finished it, I kind of thought there would be something inside. Jamie pointed out. They did. Batgirl said, though she seemed to be barely paying attention to the rest of the team. Her face resembled a little kid in a candy store as she scanned the room and ran figures on her wrist-mounted computer. Holographic projectors, hard light generators, sensory feedback engines. This is amazing. You guys outdid yourselves. Barbara all but squealed. Robin grinned broadly at his girlfriend as she circled the room and continued to take stock of the scenario room and its abilities. Beyond their hero work and apprenticeship to Batman, this was something that had led to the two of them as a couple. They were both extremely big fans on advanced technology. Where they differed was the preferences for hardware, as in gadgets and things like the scenario room for Robin, and software such as using her personally designed systems to peek at just about everything there was to peek at as she wished for Batgirl. It was really no wonder that both teams graduated high school early and had a full ride to practically any educational institution in the country. A few overseas as well. I don't know what any of those things are. Beast Boy said with a frown as he clutched his head. Yeah, man, it's just a fancy empty room. Wally said as he sagged slightly. Well, we have to turn it on first. Cyborg said with a smirk, giving a nod to Robin, who simply pressed the small screen integrated into the bracer on his outfit. The team gasped as the room flashed before it became white and suddenly appeared to be an endless void. This is amazing. Naruto breathed out. He had thought this whole time that Earthlings were so far behind others in technology, but perhaps the more advanced items were just not yet readily available. Holy shit, a real-life virtual reality room? Wally asked. Bro, it's a real Star Trek holodeck. This is insane. Jamie added. You guys haven't seen the best part yet. Robin smirked. Tower Scenario Delta 1. There was a faint chirp sound as the computer acknowledged the vocal command. The room then flashed briefly before they suddenly found themselves on a city street. After a couple of moments, those more familiar with Jump City realized they were at the Aspen Road and Garfield Street intersection. The West Coast Credit Bank loomed over them with shops lining the streets in every direction. This is really amazing, you two. Batgirl cheered happily as she bent down and tested the feeling of the road. It felt like real asphalt rather than the smooth metal of the scenario room. See, you're impressed already, but there's one more thing. Cyborg said. Tower, activate casual simulation. Another chirp of acknowledgement before the area was suddenly packed with people and vehicles, even animals. Everything short of tiny bugs. The vehicles stopped and drivers slammed on their car horns, hollering at the Titans standing in the middle of the roadway. The people walking alongside the road on the illusory sidewalks stopped and stared or whispered with their friends at the people standing in the middle of traffic. How can you afford this level of tech? Raven asked as she sent a couple of teenage boys fleeing with a glare. A third boy simply looked more interested, creeping her out. Afford it? I helped develop some of it. Well, the hardlight stuff is all our man Cyborg. Robin said cheerfully, slapping the older boy on the back. It started as a passion project. Went through some stuff and well, that's a story for another time. Cyborg said somewhat awkwardly. Anyway, wanted to show this room off at the same time we handed out these schedules. They're for training times and briefings or meetings. Only a couple times a week for each and most of it's open. Batgirl will hand out schedules with duties around the tower for everyone when we are fully operational. As it is our first team session will be in a couple days, first thing in the morning. Robin explained as he clicked a few times on his wrist-mounted screen and a box Cyborg had retrieved from one of the support drones of the scenario room vibrated and beeped. Inside, a collection of small pocketable communicators alerted that they had received a file. They're color-coded. Batgirl, Robin, and myself already have integrated ones in our gear. I can probably do the same for Naruto and Jamie's armor. Which reminds me, Naruto, I got the supplies in if you want to crack at fixing up your gear today. Cyborg said. The group stepped forward and collected their while Naruto nodded to the older boy. It would be nice to get his equipment functioning so that he could get back to full power. All Helghian soldiers, from the average citizen caste guardsmen to the warrior caste troopers and the superior caste elites, were incomplete without their tools and armor. Starfire smiled brightly at the orange and red communicator as she picked it up. It felt more and more like she belonged as the newly formed titans added more and more things to tie them together into the mix. Matching communicator units, training together, sharing a building like some sort of dormitory. It was nice to have others she felt she could consider friends around her. Even if they had only recently begun to get to know each other. Jamie nodded at the two-tone blue unit while Wally lightly tossed the orange and yellow one in a hand up and down. Raven's was a purple and black and she simply gave it a once-over before clicking it onto her belt. Beast Boy quickly grabbed his green unit and began messing with every feature he could. Cyborg nearly snorted at the look of the diminutive teen as he played with the device in his hands. He didn't have the heart to tell the kid he looked almost like a toddler playing with their parents' phone. Naruto turned his own unit over in his hands. It was blue and white with a surprising amount of features implemented into the device. Thankfully he had already discussed what he planned to do with his armor to Cyborg, so the boy had easily matched the plant scheme with his new tool. "We're really a team then," Beast Boy said with the softest smile Naruto had seen on the kid's face. "Undoubtedly. Now we're a team," Naruto agreed, sharing a smile with the boy. "Yeah, about that Teen Titans. Really? Tell me that wasn't your idea." Wally joked only for his smile to drop at the glare she sent him. Robin did his best to not chuckle as he intercepted his annoyed girlfriend's attention and told the newest members to head up and grab a shower and settle in. The rest of the group separated as well. While Raven attempted to flee before her newly acquired best friend Starfire could properly pursue her, Robin and Batgirl moved off to discuss more needs for the team as well as more personal subjects. It wasn't hard to remove Barbar's ire as long as you were bringing up crime fighting or academics. Wally and Jamie were led along by Beast Boy, who intended to make sure they took the rooms closest to him. Neither of the older teens minded. Naruto wondered if they had that much of a less developed sense of smell than himself, as he couldn't have bared sleeping even on the same floor as Beast Boy. He liked the kid, but the fact remained he was very messy and obviously smelly. Cyborg led Naruto up to the basement just above the scenario room. This was the largest section of the tower. While the top 3 floors that formed the T-shape for the building were large, they were thin enough that they didn't cause danger of leaning the building. The tower was mirrored in the opposite direction beneath the surface of the island, however the section underground was more than twice as thick and wide as the uppermost floors. While the scenario room took up a good portion of that space, Cyborg's favorite domain took up most of the rest. Expansive garages and workshops filled the space and plenty of subsections that allowed him to compartmentalize various projects away from the rest of his area. "So," Cyborg began as he dropped into an office chair and spun slightly to a desk with all manner of schematics and monitors displaying diagrams. "I have been studying everything you gave me and either found or fabricated everything I need for the body of your armor. A couple of systems like the gravity manipulator I can't really touch yet. Same for your helmet. I don't know what that material for the glass-like portions is, but it's nothing I've ever seen before." Naruto hummed in thought. He sadly was far from an engineer. He couldn't tell his teammate what it was that needed to be done to fix the equipment beyond the more basic maintenance and repairs taught to troops in the field. They'd already discussed that, and Cyborg hadn't held it against him in the slightest, telling him some basic friendly things such as everyone has their specialties. Didn't change the fact that Naruto felt useless when it came to his own equipment. It was almost embarrassing. "Well, I'm sure I'll figure something out. Go up and grab your gear. I have one last surprise that's just for you and not the rest of the team," Cyborg said before he hopped up and started making his way down the long hall between his various projects. Naruto was quick to do as he was asked, but Cyborg was already working on something by the time he returned. Finding himself somewhat curious, he peeked over his shoulder and noticed he was putting the finishing touches on tiny barbed darts about half an inch in length. "What are you working on?" he asked. The simple question was enough to pull a smile from the machine man's face. "Your surprise. Check it out." He stepped aside, letting Naruto a better look and room to pick one up. He analyzed the small tools. Running one between his fingertips, he realized they would be excellent projectile weapons. He hadn't yet brought up the issue with Cyborg, but the man had already remedied one of the many issues altering his fighting style to a more non-lethal one had presented to him. They are similar to some tools Batgirl and Robin use, but scaled down so that you could fit them between your fingers more easily. I call them stun splinters. Cause they are the size of splinters, but each carries enough of a charge that it should be able to short-circuit most mechanical opponents and stun biological ones. Well, as long as they have body mass around the same as the average human. You outdid yourself, Victor. Sorry, I mean, Cyborg. Naruto grimaced slightly at using another member's given name without permission. No worries, Victor is my name after all. As long as you're fine with me calling you Stormy whenever I please. Cyborg said with a grin. Naruto grimaced at that. He wasn't fond of that version of his hero name. Guess not. Soupy. Short for superior, not too close to soups for Superman. I guess just Storm it is. Feels kinda stuffy though. Cyborg said as he rubbed his chin and thought. Thank you for these and the repairs on my armor as well, Victor. Naruto said. No problem, man. I'm pretty happy just to get to mess with all this alien, Helghy tech. Cyborg said as he pawed over Naruto's armor. Well, I'll get started so if you don't mind, Cyborg said as he glanced toward the door. Oh, well thanks again. Naruto awkwardly said as he stepped away. Naruto glanced back as he headed for the elevator. Cyborg had slipped a pair of headphones on and lightly bobbed his head as he laid out the gear on his work table. By the time the doors to the elevator began to close, the eerie blue light of the various tools in use had begun to reflect off of the steel walls of the hall. The next morning, as the doors on the same elevator slid open, Naruto quietly made his way into the workroom where he found Cyborg resting with a set of cables connected to his machine side. A small bar on the computer screen beside his head gave a readout of 97% charged. The Helghy felt some pity, silently of course, for his teammate. He knew that Cyborg wouldn't want any such emotion from him. If he had been in his place, Naruto wouldn't either, but he found himself unable to stop the feeling. He put the thought out of his mind as he turned to look at the table where his armor lay. His eyes widened in shock as he took in the objects laid out before him. Gone were the scratches and pockmarks of battle damage. The burnt and tarnished color that had altered his armor's original look was replaced as well. The suit itself looked brand new and had an entirely new pattern decorating it. One that he had spoken with Cyborg about for some time before last night. How did you complete all this in a single night? Naruto asked almost silently. I don't need much sleep anymore, a voice began, causing Naruto's head to snap around to look at the smirking Cyborg. Plus, when it's something I am enjoying working on, it pretty much just handles itself. Oh, and this arm can separate into like 6 little tools, making it really easy to simply do whatever it is I need to do without having to switch out or anything like that. Still, in one single night? Naruto asked as he turned back to the suit. The FFT, all your really advanced stuff was either too much for me to even begin messing with or still working. Your helmet will take loads longer to get taken care of. It's got a lot of really fine detail pieces and some really advanced stuff inside there. Also, I'll need to find a way to integrate the communicator units into your gear through it. Cyborg seemed to be already contemplating how to tackle the job with Naruto's helmet. This paint job is excellent as well. Naruto commented as he held up the chest piece of his armor. The new paint job, or that was what Naruto assumed it was primarily a dark blue, nearly purple blue. Lighter blues and white were used to break up the armor overall and give the equipment a heroic, almost knightly appearance. The change in color scheme alone made the armor seem far less militant and more designed as a champion of peace and justice and all that other philosophical sort of thing that Robin got worked up about. It's not paint. It is actually another layer of armor for energy attacks. It's supposed to help dissipate energy blasts before they can cook you inside. Not that you should really need to worry about that, being as the armor can handle some crazy levels of heat to begin with. It's just why pass up the chance for additional protection, right? Plus, this way I don't have to repaint it for you after every fight. Cyborg said with a chuckle. It's more than I can thank you for, Cyborg. I feel as if it's too much. Naruto said as he continued to pick over his new suit of armor. Don't mention it. Consider it a welcoming gift. Plus, I have stuff in the works for everyone. Starfire's one of the toughest. Well, Beast Boy's is actually way harder, but still. When it's all said and done, it's really no trouble compared to some of the other projects I have in the works. Victor explained. Still, thank you. Naruto said before noticing the time. We should get ready. I don't think Robin and Batgirl will be all that happy if we are late for our first day of team training. Yeah, probably not. Cyborg said as both boys prepared for the training session. Naruto quickly adorned himself with his armor, though he sadly couldn't finish the look with a helmet. He still struck a spectacular figure fully clad in his new uniform. By the time both Naruto and Cyborg had made it to the lowest floor of the tower, the rest of the Titans had gathered outside the scenario room. They were all in their hero uniforms. Most were the same as Naruto had recalled from his first time meeting each of them. The only new outfit in the group was Starfire's. She had clearly modified the gladiator clothing that the Gordanians had made her wear, and what armor she had was coated in a similar layer to Naruto's gear. The Tamaranian princess had been previously clad in extremely revealing clothing with little in the way of armor beyond a stylized gorget, vambraces, and pauldrons. The rest of her clothing had barely covered her more intimate regions, except for her thigh-high boots. Now though her clothing was far less suggestive. Though Naruto couldn't deny that Starfire remained naturally seductive and he had difficulty removing his gaze from her form. Not that he was the only one, as every male in the room struggled to do that as well as the females. While she had removed the pauldrons entirely, she had exchanged the thin strips of cloth over her breasts and groin for a slightly more conservative outfit. It still tightly clung to the shape of her body, but it allowed her a level of coverage that the girl had missed for the last several years. It was actually similar to clothing most Amaranian women wore now, and she felt comfortable in it despite how much it displayed her naturally seductive form. But the leotard-style outfit and a set of thigh-high boots and elbow-length gloves, Starfire made for a memorable image. Arm guards wrapping fully around her forearms along with metallic knee guards provided just a small measure of added rigidity for hand-to-hand blows in a fight. Overall, his fellow alien appeared far more comfortable in her new clothing and more combat-ready than before. Not that he had doubted her skill in battle then. Simply put, she now looked ready for hero work. "Friend Naruto, your new armor is splendid." Starfire chirped as she floated over to him and even glided in a circle around him, as if checking every angle. "You appear very heroic." She complimented while Naruto chuckled in response. "You do too, Starfire. I'm happy you no longer have to dress like a gladiator." Naruto said a bit more quietly so only she could hear him. He didn't imagine that her past as a slave was too fond of a topic for discussion. The girls simply nodded happily as they joined up with the others. Robin nodded in approval of Naruto's new look. He didn't look like a soldier anymore, he looked just as Starfire had described him. "Alright everyone, we're just going to do a basic scenario today. A group of criminals have been smuggling weapons into the country through the harbor here at Jump City. We need to catch all of the perpetrators and make sure we don't let any of the weapons to be missed. The tower computer has the scenario prepped so as we enter everything will be set up. We have enough people that we can split into groups with roles. So the first group is Overwatch, Batgirl, Starfire, and Cyborg. You three will be along the rooftops making sure that we aren't caught off guard and we don't miss anything. Next is Anvil, you guys will be the first to engage. That's gonna be Kid Flash, Beast Boy, and Blue Beetle. Last is Hammer and we'll hit the LM from behind when they start putting up a fight against you guys. That'll be myself, Superior, and Raven. Should be easy enough, just normal criminals." Robin explained. The group nodded and got ready for their first scenario training. Robin grinned at that. He had his own team, friends, and he hoped to build something similar to the Justice League from this foundation. "Before we go in, any last questions?" Robin asked. "Oh, yeah. What's a perpetrator?" Beast Boy asked with a raised hand like a schoolboy. "A perpetrator? It's a perp, a criminal." Raven answered instinctively. She had been caught off guard that someone doing hero work hadn't known that. Then again Beast Boy was pretty young, even compared to the rest of the team. "Oh, a perp? I didn't know that was where it came from," Beast Boy said in mild shock. "Yeah, okay, any other questions?" Robin asked. The silence and determined looks in his teammates' eyes were enough to cause him to grin again. "Alright, Titans go," Robin ordered as the doors opened. But that the team moved into position according to their roles and prepared to crush this practical test. It went smoothly, Batgirl was an excellent coordinator, and between Cyborg's taking over of the security cameras and a couple of tiny drones and Starfire's literal eyes in the sky, they easily picked out each target and the weapon crates they were there to seize. When she gave the go-ahead, Kid Flash rushed in first and easily disarmed the guards before Beast Boy barreled through the doors in the form of a massive green gorilla. The disarmed criminals scattered before the beast only for Blue Beetle to sweep in and start basting them with energy beams, knocking them out. The three young heroes decimated the enemy until another dozen raced off of the ship in the dock and took up spots that pinned the Titans down with gunfire. Suddenly several of the criminals gasped or shouted in surprise as black energy wrapped around them or their guns and they lifted off the ground. Their comrades turned to help only for a hail of projectiles from Naruto and Robin to impact them, dropping a couple and stunned, twitching, masses on the floor. Immediately after that Naruto and Robin were among them, Robin using his staff, disconnecting it into a scream of sticks and Naruto simply using his gauntleted fists. In total the scenario lasted just under 10 minutes, including the search and seizure of all the weapons. The Titans were in high spirits afterward, chattering happily about what they each did. Robin praised each of them for their accomplishments and gave a few suggestions based on the recordings they could view and reminded them they needed to get in personal time in the scenario room and that they had another team exercise in a couple of days. After that he released the team to do their own thing. Meanwhile he and Batgirl had an appointment. Kid Flash had given them both a suggestive wink when they said appointment. The couple wished it was something as fun as slipping off together. Sadly they didn't have a date so much as they had a meeting waiting for them. A meeting with a big bat. Well, that wasn't necessarily true. The pair of teens had a few hours. But it had been far too long since they fooled around. After disappearing into Batgirl's room they made up for the lost time, only stopping short of the final line because neither felt completely ready for such a thing. Not that was unwilling to make himself ready, but he wasn't about to try and pressure Barbara into it before she was ready. Eventually they couldn't stay hidden away with one another any longer and had to go have their actual meeting. Making their way to one of the three monitor rooms, the two members of the Bat family gave one another a quick once-over to make sure they looked their best. Barbara had just finished straightening her boyfriend's belt for him and returned to a stance resembling casual readiness when the screen flickered on and the cowed scowling face of their joint mentor appeared before them. "Is the room secure?" he asked with narrowed eyes. "Yes, Bruce. We designed it ourselves," Barbara commented. Bruce's scowl deepened and his eyes narrowed to thin slits. Rather than say anything though, he simply grunted before moving on to the topics. "So you have your team set up then?" he asked, getting nods. "Very well then. How are things coming with the tower? Do you know?" "It's all smooth. Thanks for the offer, but no, we don't need anything," Robin interrupted. "How are you finding it?" Batman asked. "Careful investments from all our joint ventures. Just like you taught us. Really, we have logistics covered," Barbara replied. Batman nodded slightly before he decided to move on to the next category. "You did research on your members?" he asked. "Yeah, for those that we could. KF and Blue Beetle have history with us, but we still dug through their files before we invited them. I went through everything the League has on Cyborg and he is all good. Beast Boy is still pretty much a kid despite his past with the Doom Patrol," Barbara answered before trailing off. She knew none of them had been the ones he was interested in. "The aliens and the witch?" Batman asked. The couple was silent for a moment but kept from awkwardly shifting under their teacher's gaze. He really earned the nickname Bat at times like this. That thought running through their head didn't do much to ease the judging glare that was ever present on Batman's face. "Practically all we have on Raven is what she's told us and the occasional report of her stopping a crime. She seems intent on trying to avoid too much attention or interaction, but wants to help people. There's more there, but we don't want to risk turning her from the team or hero work in general by invading her personal life too quickly," Barbara explained. Bruce had to grunt out an agreement to that. He had learned from first-hand experience the damage to trust from his own paranoid personality. It was difficult to overcome such a betrayal even if they understood his reasoning. Until she had proven otherwise, Raven was an ally. "The aliens?" he asked. "Well, it's kind of the same boat as Raven. All we have is what they told us. There wasn't much we could pull from the Gordanian shipwreck," Robin admitted. "An alien princess turned slave and gladiator and a different race's decorated captain turned deserter. Normally it would sound too good to be true, but we have yet to see any reason or suspicion of betrayal," Barbara commented. "The willingness to kill from the two is another issue," Batman said, a scowl. "They are both trying a non-lethal approach. Superior has even incorporated new tools into his arsenal like the stun splinters and has a pair of tonfas outfitted with tossers if he needs a weapon beyond his fists in close combat," Robin defended. "And the girl?" Bruce asked. "She can keep her energy attacks non-lethal and doesn't fight with actual weapons," Batgirl pointed out. "You still know nothing about either of them. Does it not strike you as odd that this Naruto would write off his own people so easily, or that a princess is not desperate to return to her people after years as a trophy and plaything for her supposed worst enemy?" Batman asked. The two teens were silent. They couldn't refute that. It was too good to be true, then again in Batman's experience it did happen from time to time, so he wasn't about to outright accuse the two aliens of such things. He simply wanted his two students to remain wary. It could keep them alive and safe. "I'll talk to the Lanterns and see if they can tell me anything about their people and about them specifically," Batman said without room to argue. Not that either of the teens planned to. They were more than a little curious about their teammates. Maybe nosy was a better term. It was too expected of being around Bruce for so long though. "Next we can discuss why it is you both decided to migrate all the way to Jump City without telling me." His look was more toward Robin. The teen shrunk under his gaze, though Batgirl did shoot a look toward Robin. After all, she had told Bruce not exactly where she planned to go for school, but that it was out of Gotham. He had assumed she would be taking a break from hero work or perhaps retiring. Robin on the other hand had said nothing to his adoptive father and simply up and left after his girlfriend. Bruce was fine with their relationship but was very disapproving of such reckless action. "Well, see," Robin began only to be interrupted by the alarm of his communicator choking off, signifying some team members were in need of some help. "Gotta go, bye Bruce," Batgirl said before disconnecting the call and racing off with Robin. "Saved by the bell," Batgirl giggled. "No kidding," Robin replied with a smile as they ran for the garage. A few hours earlier, as Robin and Batgirl had run off for their meeting, Kid Flash had decided he was ready to make an attempt at getting to know what he had mentally labeled the floating alien sex goddess. Like the others, he had chosen to shower and dress in more civilian-style clothes first. When he went searching for her, he was a bit put off with the fact her room was right across from the big alien dude's instead of his own, but brushed past that annoyance easily. Sadly, she wasn't in her room. He searched practically everywhere before he found her sitting and talking with the other alien on the roof. Both looked relaxed and happy, and he simply watched for a bit. The boy noticed him easily though and casually waved at Wally, causing the speedster to have to act like he was just coming to join the pair. "Hey guys. You like sitting on rooftops doing nothing too?" he said before mentally kicking himself for talking faster than he thought. "It is a very nice day. We wanted to enjoy the peaceful weather and breeze while we enjoyed each other's company," Starfire explained with a friendly smile. "Oh? Well, that's cool. It is kinda nice," Wally said. "Amran is very harsh compared to this," Starfire said as she looked over the bay and picked out the shapes of tiny boats going to and fro over the peaceful waters. Acania was once like this according to our history books, but now it is almost all rugged wilderness or very packed cities. Naruto commented only to be shrugged off within a huff from Wally, causing him to frown at being dismissed in such a way. "So besides the weather, what do you think of Earth so far, Starfire?" Wally asked. "It is peaceful. It's almost like a vacation staying here," she said with a smile, though while Wally missed it, Naruto could see the slightly guilty expression on her face. "Yeah? What's your favorite part so far?" He prodded, sitting a little too close to her for Naruto's comfort. Starfire didn't mind, of course. Personal space was far less of a matter for Tamaranians than it was for most humans and Hakanians. Naruto frowned ever so slightly. He could understand the other boy's attraction to Starfire. He could also easily recognize the boy's intentions. It bothered him though he bit his tongue. Were he back home it wouldn't have been difficult to state his intentions, and should the female in question not have a clear preference, the two males would challenge one another. It was part of why Naruto had more or less the pick of mates. He was influential, attractive, and more importantly for Hakanian society, undefeated. Tamaranians were far different. More rigid. Almost all notable Tamaranians were arranged to wed at young ages or were slowly courted in a long process. Humans were even more subtle and slow in Naruto's mind from what Beast Boy had rambled on about. "I don't know. I haven't really gotten to leave the tower much yet," Starfire admitted to Wally, pulling Naruto's attention back to the conversation. "What? That's criminal. I have an idea. Come with me into Jump City today and I'll show you all the stuff you could want to see and you can experience the culture and stuff. What do you say?" Wally asked with a grin. "Oh, that sounds wonderful," Starfire cheered. Wally frowned as she turned to face her fellow alien. "Naruto, you'll come with us, won't you?" Starfire's puppy dog-eyed pout was unnecessary as Naruto was intent on joining them. He could see that Wally intended this to be more of a courting moment and the Hakanian refused to stand aside when his own interests ran counter to allowing the boy to be alone with his friend. She was only his friend at the moment. "Of course I'll go if you are going, Cory," Naruto said with a smile. Wally blinked at the name Naruto had used for Starfire and realized that the pair of aliens was closer than he first assumed. "Alright then. Come on, there are a couple civilian cars we can use to go into the city down in the garage," Wally said as he led the other two toward the elevator. In no time the three of them were headed into the heart of the city with Wally driving. Technically he really shouldn't have been, being as he only had a restricted license, but it's still more certified than either Naruto or Starfire were. As they drove, Naruto and Starfire craned their necks to try and get better views of the city as they passed by. Beyond the blur of buildings and people they could recall from their battle with the Gordanians, neither had gotten a chance to really look at the city. It was mostly clean and tidy with large amounts of people and vehicles crowding the streets. Bright signs advertised all manner of products and stores almost everywhere they looked. Altogether it was a bit of culture shock. Naruto couldn't help but feel a bit mesmerized at the mundane lives the people he saw were living. He had to wonder if his own citizen cast members back home lived similar lives or if theirs was more similar to his own. Rigid and regimented. "The people dress so differently from one another," Starfire mentioned. Naruto had to agree. Tamarin and Hakania didn't lend much attention to fashion, so their attire was typically very simple and functional. The average citizens here looked to enjoy a wide range of outfits. Some that Naruto felt were even a bit gaudy. "Well yeah. I mean take out clothes for instance. I know Batgirl got you both set up but they still sort of act as an expression of your own personality," Wally said, though he was mostly just echoing some of the random claptrap he had heard on the TV from some of the female talk show hosts. "Really?" both aliens asked in surprise. Yeah. Like that green shirt you have on, Starfire. It's like your eyes, you know. Just not as bright, so it makes them more easy to pick out. Then again, being as beautiful as they are, it's not that necessary," Wally said. "Oh, thank you," Starfire said honestly though a bit awkwardly at the random compliment. "No problem. Let's see, oh, and like the outfit is snug but not too tight. So it shows off your figure without Wally attempted to say but was pulling words out of his ass and was finding it a bit difficult to continue sounding respectful when his mind wanted to say things along the lines of that shirt shows off your body just right or I really like how tight the butt area of your pants is. Your clothing is attractive but functional. It shows off your body without exposing it to others. You have a mate's perfect proportions. Naruto said confidently, causing Starfire and Wally to turn to him and stare briefly. Wally mentally snorted at the blunt alien putting his foot in his mouth. At least he did, until his jaw dropped slightly at the faint blush that spread onto Starfire's cheeks. Truly? Even for you? She asked a bit demurely. Especially for me. Only strong, beautiful women would be considered by me. Naruto said with a charming smile that just didn't fit with his words in Wally's opinion. Naruto and Starfire flirted, if you could call it that, back and forth as Wally tried his best to wrap his head around what the hell he was hearing, or more the fact that it seemed to work with Starfire. Yes, you would make excellent children for the next generation. He heard Naruto say. Make excellent children for the next what the hell? How in the fuck does that work? The speedster mentally cried as he watched the aliens essentially talk in clinical tones about the fact they were both physically prime specimens of their respective races. It was so weird. Yes, like humans, my people consider kissing to be a romantic gesture. I know you didn't mean it that way when we first met, but it was still, I guess, enjoyable. Wally heard the Helghian say to the Tamaranian. Oh, well, that's a misconception. While it can be used that way, Tamaranians still have a certain level of intimacy and romance with kissing as well. There is even an old legend that it was only discovered that we could transfer language that way because two lovers from separate tribes with different languages accidentally learned one another's language when they eloped to wed. Starfire explained. Naruto was caught off guard. Then his mind went to the second time Starfire had kissed him. It had been longer and fuller than the first. Not to mention he only had a small amount of new language skills to pass on compared to his own tongue. Then the second time Naruto mumbled, causing Starfire to blush as she realized she had been caught. You know, Starfire, I know quite a bit of Spanish. Wally said suggestively. Actually, Batgirl knew some Spanish. I passed it on to Starfire when she kissed me. Naruto said, getting a put-out expression from the other boy. It made Naruto a bit happier to know he was interfering with the boy's attempt to try and sway the princess. Wally, what is that? Starfire asked, interrupting the brief staring match the two males were unintentionally caught up in. Huh? Oh, that is the Found Plaza. Jump City was founded in like the 1800s sometime by a religious group called the Juhasian Church that were nicknamed Jumpers for some reason, not sure about the whole reason, but after they founded the town it started growing really quickly and pretty soon all the original founders and their church and everything were forgotten till like a few years ago. Then the new Juhasians rebuilt that church where the old one stood and made the plaza in front of it. So it's like the center of the original city, I guess. Wally said with a somewhat smug smirk. We should get out and actually walk around, Cory. Naruto suggested, ignoring the look from Wally. Good idea. The girl said as she and Naruto got out and Wally grumbled while parking the car. By the time he had caught back up to them, Kid Flash found himself pausing. Naruto stood in front of Starfire pointing out something he found interesting. Starfire wasn't looking where the other boy was pointing though. She was staring at the Helghian with clear intent and Wally felt his hopes for this afternoon crash and burn immediately. It seemed Starfire was as much intent on swaying the one she was attracted to as both boys had been. The speedster realized he hadn't stood a chance. The game was rigged. He didn't nope though. Instead, as he watched his two new teammates interact, he realized he was actually rather happy for them. He had to imagine being taken from your home and dropped on an alien world and trying to simply start a life there was daunting, to say the least. Trying to do it with someone dealing with a similar situation, especially one you found attractive and interesting as a person, was far less imposing. So he came to a decision. He would support his fellow man in his mission to couple up with the girl. If it didn't work out, so be it. Then it would be Wally's time to shine, but as far as he was concerned now, Naruto and Starfire didn't need much other than a slight nudge to move beyond the labels of friends and teammates. He started stepping toward them. He planned on taking them to the movies or something, then simply slipping out before it began so the two of them could be alone for a bit. That plan was ruined when the familiar sound of gunfire erupted just down the street. Despite not being all that familiar with firearms, both Naruto and Starfire easily recalled the sound of guns from the morning's training session. They turned at the same time as Kid Flash and began moving forward as the small crowds of people murmured worriedly. As the trio of Teen Titans stood there, they watched the doors to a bank branch be thrown open and four masked men race out with bags filled with money and rifles. The communicators. We need to let Everyday know. Wally said as he sped into an alley and out again, suddenly dressed in his uniform. We will have to wear these for this. Naruto said with a frown for not being in his armor. We can make do. Starfire said as she floated up off the ground and charged up her energy to attack with. The Titans on scene quickly snapped into action against a small group of masked and armed robbers as they attempted to make their escape. Starfire easily cut them off before they could make it to their vehicle, while Kid Flash moved too quickly for them to keep track of and disarmed the majority of the criminals without issue. Criminals weren't inclined to fight fair however, and the pair of remaining bad guys moved to take a small family hostage. That was something easier said than done however, as Naruto put himself into their path and engaged them directly. The first gunman was easy pickings for the physically superior teen as he tore the weapon from the man's hands and crumpled him with a solid fist to the gut. He might need some medical attention afterward, but he definitely would live. Sadly, the second man had been too far away for Naruto to reach easily, and while he had brought his communicator, Naruto hadn't planned for something like this to happen out of nowhere. Just like his armor, his tools including the stun splinters that Cyborg had made for him were not with him at the moment. The man took aim with his rifle, causing Wally and Starfire to widen their eyes in worry as he didn't even attempt to aim for one of the heroes, instead targeting the family that he and his partner had been headed for in the first place. Naruto was able to react just in time though. Using his people's natural ability to manipulate the elements, he ejected a thin shield of earth between himself and the gunman while shielding the family with his own body. The wall stopped the burst of rounds fired by the criminal, however still not quite used to the weapons of earth, Naruto had made the shield just a little too thin for the kinetic force each round carried. While the bullets themselves were stopped, they peppered Naruto himself with sharp fast-moving fragments of stone that dug into his arms and shoulders as he remained covering the civilians. Wally and Starfire were fast at knocking the final of the thugs out of the fight following that. None too softly either as he found himself sent somersaulting through the air from Starfire hitting him high and Kid Flash hitting him low. The rough landing definitely broke something if the initial impact of the two young heroes hadn't already. "Hey, Naruto, are you guys good back there?" Wally asked worriedly. He was the only one of the three heroes really all that familiar with the real danger of earth weaponry. "We are fine," Naruto called back, returning the thin sheet of earth back to its place. Starfire swept down beside Naruto and the frightened family as they all stood once again. She noticed right away that he was bleeding slightly and moved over to help him. "Don't worry about it really, Starfire. Just tiny cuts." Naruto grinned before turning to the family to make sure they were also primarily uninjured. He hadn't expected the father to pull him into a tight hug and babble about saving him and his family. Needless to say, Naruto wasn't used to such an action and turned pleading eyes to Starfire and Kid Flash as the man tightly held him. To make matters worse, the man's family seemed to follow his lead and Naruto was soon wrapped up in a group hug which of course led to Starfire joining in as well. She wasn't one to miss out on a display of affection after all. Wally, Naruto pleaded, but the other boy simply shrugged. "It's kinda part of the job, man. You gotta get used to it sometime. Plus I'll trade if you want me to." Wally joked, raising an eyebrow toward the bigger boy, causing Naruto's eyes to narrow slightly and Kid Flash to laugh. Oh yeah, he might help get these two together, but that did not mean he wasn't going to have a blast working toward that point too. The rest of the team arrived almost at the same time as the first police and emergency personnel did. After briefly speaking with the police and making sure that the criminals would be taken safely into custody, the team all headed back to the tower. When they got back, they all headed into the main common area while Batgirl took over the task of removing the tiny fragments of stone from Naruto's wounds while letting Starfire clean them up. "It was an odd feeling, having to hold back against those men so greatly," Naruto commented. "It felt strange. However, you should not have held back so much if it meant you would get injured, friend Naruto," Starfire lightly admonished. "I'm sorry. I underestimated the strength of the earth weapons. They did not appear that powerful. Either way, had I had my armor with me then I would not have been harmed at all," Naruto said. "That may be so, but you can't expect to have your armor with you at all times." Batgirl admonished him now, causing the former captain to purse his lips in displeasure at being reprimanded by the two girls. "You're right, but look, I'm fine now and rapidly healing anyway. I will be more careful next time," Naruto replied. Batgirl accepted that, for now at least. She was content with the fact that she could literally see him beginning to heal. Aliens really were just unfair. "What you two said about having to hold back. I know it may be hard now, but some of the greatest heroes in the Justice League have to do the same thing. To a much greater extent as well," Robin lectured Naruto and Coriander. Batgirl nodded along as she put away the first aid kit she had been using the tweezers and gauze from for Naruto's small injuries. Batman had impressed upon both of his proteges just how dangerous the other heroes were in the event they became a threat somehow. The reality of Superman's powers was a bit terrifying and it lent a bit of understanding to why their mentor was so paranoid. That was ignoring the fact that the League had expanded massively in recent years and included other Kryptonians. Not that the possible threats were even limited to Kryptonians. Like Barbara had thought about earlier, aliens really were unfair. "I am still unhappy with you," Starfire said as she and Naruto began leaving the common area and all of the Titans began returning to their own daily activities. I didn't have a choice. I should have known better with the guns the thieves had, but I couldn't let the civilians be injured. Naruto explained. Starfire looked like she was about to say something else when everyone froze as alarms began to blare and Jump City security camera feeds flickered onto yet another robbery occurring. "Oh come on, again?" Wally asked as they all began to return to the common room. "Is today some kind of robber holiday?" Beast Boy asked, getting a mild sigh from Cyborg next to him and an honestly worried look from Raven. Though those who were a bit more mature recognized she was genuinely worried about his intelligence. "These guys are different. That one is definitely using some kind of power." "Naruto, are you good?" Robin asked. "I am very good." Naruto replied looking offended. "He means are you healthy enough to participate in the mission to stop these robbers?" Batgirl chimed in. "Oh, then yes I am good. Let me get dressed." Naruto quickly headed off to put on his armor. Starfire and Kid Flash did the same. Within a mere few moments the Teen Titans were headed out toward their targets. The robbers, apparently a team of similarly aged criminals with various powers, had already robbed their target and were recklessly racing their way through streets narrowly missing pedestrians and forcing other cars off of the road. The Titans were prepared for that though. A pair of projectiles launched by Batgirl from the hood of the Titan's own vehicle easily blew out the passenger side tires of the criminal's vehicle. It would have sent the car dangerously careening onto the crowded sidewalk if a barrier of black energy didn't spring up around it to prevent just that. Raven held the barrier up just long enough to completely stop the vehicle before she floated up into a position beside Starfire and Blue Beetle, who both took overwatch positions to make sure none of the robbers split off and ran for it. As the Titan's transport came to a stop, the rest of the team launched themselves up and out to face the gang opposite them as they stumbled out of the wrecked car. "Give it up. You can't beat us," Robin declared as he still readied for a fight. "You think so?" a floating kid said. He was small, the size of a badly proportioned toddler, and had an odd assortment of tech covering his person. Naruto took in their appearance and realized each of them was like the Titans themselves. They wore ornate and unique uniforms and were clearly not the average robbers that he, Kid Flash, and Starfire had previously dealt with. "Who are you guys?" Beast Boy asked from his tiger-like form. We are the Hive Five," the same kid announced, getting confused looks from the Titans and annoyed looks from his comrades. "But there's 7 of you," Cyborg pointed out. The tiny green boy that Naruto was a bit confused with, being as he seemed to be their leader, didn't respond except to glare. Instead he launched straight into an attack that shot a pulse of blue energy at Cyborg, causing him to convulse and grunt in pain before collapsing onto the ground. "Titans, go," Robin commanded, and the team launched their attacks. Sadly their opponents seemed prepared for some of them. The female in their group easily took on not only Batgirl but Robin as well. She weaved in and out of their projectile attacks and let loose her own assault of sorcery that put both members of the Bat family onto the back foot. As if that wasn't enough, with practiced grace, she leapt into a somersault that ended with her boot crashing down onto Robin's head and sending him sprawling as he cried out in pain. "Rob!" Kid Flash cried as his attention left his own opponent for his friend. That proved to be a mistake however, as his own opponent, a boy in a bright yellow uniform and much larger than Kid Flash himself, wrapped him up in a tight embrace before slamming himself backwards in a textbook German suplex. Unlike Robin, who was slowly regaining his feet while Batgirl kept Jinx busy, Wally was out of the fight for good, like Cyborg. Private Hive was jumped by Beast Boy at that moment, but the younger hero was not quite as experienced as his comrades and chose poorly in the giant boa constrictor he transformed into. The two of them began fighting for dominance, but Beast Boy couldn't help any of his fellow Titans out now. The others were also beginning to struggle. Naruto fought the hulking mammoth, but with his less than lethal restrictions, it was a more even fight than he would like, as his opponent possessed superhuman strength and durability. The flying members of the team were not much better off. Kid Wicked creating portals and energy blasts as well as running hit and run tactics with his teleportation would have already been an issue for Starfire and Raven when he tag-teamed with Billy Numerous, who created horses of clones to dogpile and overrun the girls. They had a clear advantage over them. Blue Beetle was surprised to be suffering from a similar attack that Cyborg had been taken out with. Gizmo, the tiny green boy, was frustrated that it hadn't completely knocked the hero out like it had Cyborg. It wasn't the only trick up his little sleeves though. Between EMP weapons and a gravity control pack, he was extremely difficult for Jamie to pin down as he wove in between everything Blue Beetle threw at him. As Robin prepared to jump back in to help Barabara and try to turn the tide of the fight, he recalled that there was another one. He realized just in time as well. Seymour, the final seventh member of the poorly named Hive 5, let loose a massive blast of energy from his eye-like weapon that destabilized the nearby buildings and endangered the terrified crowds of civilians nearby. Titans. The buildings. Robin shouted as he rushed forward to try and shield those he could from the falling debris. Jinx looked horrified by her teammates' actions, but that look turned to cold rage as Gizmo called his team into a retreat. The Titans were too busy preventing injury or death to the civilians to pursue them, and the Hive 5 quickly made their escape in a commandeered panel van. The team hurried to do what they could. Thankfully Beast Boy and Raven were able to stop most of the building from falling onto the sidewalk area by transforming into a giant octopus for Beast Boy and warping most of the chunks of debris away for Raven. Meanwhile the Bat Brats and the pair of aliens hurriedly got as many people as they could to safety, while Blue Beetle rescued their own downed teammates. When it all had ended, only Cyborg and Kid Flash had any real injuries, though Robin had a pretty nasty gash and bruise collected from the blow that Jinx had landed on him. A couple of civilians had gotten minor injuries, but thanks to the Titans, it wasn't anything worse than a few scrapes and bruises. Why are you all so upset? We did manage to rescue all of the innocents, did we not? Starfire asked. We saved everyone, but we couldn't stop the criminals. They managed to get away with all that money. Raven explained in obvious annoyance, not at Starfire but at their defeat. It was a feeling shared across most of the team. They made us look like fools. Cyborg growled. Yeah, I mean. They didn't even let you fight, man. Beast Boy said, trying to comfort the older teen but inadvertently rubbing salt in the wound. I'm going back to the tower. Victor grumbled as he strode off, causing both Robin and Batgirl to exchange a sigh. Ugh, who hit me with a truck? Kid Flash moaned as he came to. Batgirl and Robin stepped over to him and helped him into the vehicle. They would fill him in, but they really needed to quickly head back to the tower to have him checked out. He might have some pretty serious damage done to his head or neck. Naruto, Raven, and Starfire all turned down the ride back to the tower, deciding to do like Cyborg and more slowly make their way back to their headquarters. Raven wasn't sure why she kept alongside the two aliens. Honestly, she'd gone out of her way to avoid both as best she could since they had met. They were nice enough, no more than that they were too nice. It was like culture shock as neither seemed at all disturbed by her powers or the level of power she possessed. If anything, they seemed more impressed and appreciative, which in turn made her feel confused even more. At the moment though, that wasn't really on her mind. Instead, she was more interested in seeing how the older two teens handled the defeat they had suffered. Most of the rest of the team was easy enough to get an understanding of. Frustration, embarrassment, anger. Pretty much all of that and some more negative emotions. Naruto and Starfire seemed far less affected though. She kind of wanted to know why. What do you want to ask, Raven? Naruto finally asked as he and Starfire both turned to face the sorceress. Raven was a bit surprised and remained silent for a moment as she regained her composure. She'd been so lost trying to figure the other two misfits, as she had privately labeled them, that she hadn't realized they'd made it to one of the nicer bridgeside parks in the city. I was just trying to figure you two out, I guess. She tried to roll her shoulders for a show of nonchalance. Not that she really needed to. Naruto and Coriander were pretty much open books. The opposite of herself. Yet all three of them were a bit detached from the semblance of normal life the rest of the team had. What do you mean? Starfire asked. Well, like just now, everyone else, even me, we were all so angry and upset about losing. You two though didn't seem all that bothered. Raven pointed out. So? Naruto asked, confused. So, why weren't you mad? I mean, you're both more experienced than the rest of us are in this sort of thing, right? Should you be more angry about being embarrassed like that? Raven asked. The pair of aliens shared a confused look again. We are supposed to be embarrassed? Starfire asked. Wait, what do you mean by experience in this? Starfire and I are more new to this sort of thing than any of the rest of you. Naruto said. You used to be a soldier, and didn't you fight in gladiator battles, Starfire? Raven asked. She groaned when they looked at her like she had grown a second head. Talking to these two was a very real test in patience sometimes. What do those have to do with anything? Naruto asked. Everything. Shouldn't you two take what happened as a personal insult like everybody else? Raven demanded a little more heatedly before reining in her emotions. I still don't understand. What did they do to personally insult us? They are just criminals committing crimes. In fact, I feel like we succeeded in our primary objective, even if our opponents managed to escape with the currency they had stolen. Starfire commented. They beat us though. Raven huffed out. So? Clearly they have studied at least some of the team's abilities, as they had a counter prepared for both Cyborg and Blue Beetle, even if it didn't work fully against the latter. The female also seemed to have been expecting the methods that Batgirl and Robin fight in. Well, we have only been a team for a little while. We've only had a little bit of training. Naruto said clinically, while Starfire nodded. Yes, and like I said. No one was seriously injured, or at least I hope so. Kid Flash did receive a severe blow to the head. Starfire suddenly became worried about the boy in yellow. We should head back to the tower to check on him and talk with the others. Naruto said before he and Starfire turned away to head back toward the island base they called home. Raven could only sigh. Both of the aliens made good points, still it felt like a blow to her pride a bit to have been defeated with such relative ease by practical nobodies. Sure, had it been a more dangerous villain maybe then she could understand a defeat, but these nobodies they couldn't even count as far as she was concerned. Just what the hell was that back there, Seymour? You almost messed up big time. Jinx hissed at the boy, causing him to flinch away from the girl. He had a pretty strong crush on her, so getting scolded like this by her really burned. Whoa, back off, Jinx. It was my idea. The nasally voice of Gizmo began to interrupt her until she pivoted to glare at him. Shut your little mouth, you snotty little brat. She bit out, causing the tiny boy to shake in rage at being belittled by her. It was a perfect way to escape. You worried about a little collateral damage on the job or something? Gizmo shot back. He didn't see the blow coming, but he felt it and the second one from bouncing off the ground before Jinx planted a boot squarely on his tiny chest. Shut up. Jinx quietly whispered, actually causing Gizmo to fear her as he saw murder in her eyes. Do you all really think I give a damn about some yuppies or whatever going about their business while we pull a job? You think I care if one of them gets flattened by a falling building? Let me clear that up for you. I don't even care if you get flattened, and for the rest of you besides this little runt, I actually kinda like you. She monologued before applying a little more pressure to the boy below her, causing him to wheeze and gasp for air. You wanna know who does care about a bunch of civilian nobodies getting splattered on the concrete? The Justice League. The moment we go from heists and thefts to murder we jump into the big leagues, and I for one don't want to wake up to some floaty alien guy in my house twirling cuffs around. Do any of you? She asked, getting a resounding no from her teammates. I didn't think so. Now, with that out of the way. It seems you all need to remember who it is that is the boss of this outfit. I can tell you right now it's not you, Pipsqueak. It won't ever be while I'm around. So step on that ego, kinda like this. She pushed her foot down even harder onto Gizmo's chest to clarify her point. And shut your oversized mouth. But that she released him, letting him gasp and sputter as she headed over to the large table at the center of their hideout and tossed the bags full of cash onto the table and grinned at the haul. All that being said, boys. It's payday, let's count up the spoils and figure out the cuts, shall we? She grinned, getting cheerful replies from the rest, even if Gizmo's was a bit half-hearted. He'd learn his place in time. This was her show after all. As long as she made sure to kick up to the higher authority, of course. At the Titan Tower, the team was relieved to find out that beyond some serious bruising and obviously having been knocked unconscious, Kid Flash was right as rain. Once the team had explained what right as rain meant to Naruto and Starfire, they began discussing what had happened. We got our butts handed to us. Beast Boy helpfully chimed in, though there was a bitter tone to his voice, and both Naruto and Coriander recognized the emotions that Raven had brought up. The entire team really was feeling downtrodden. Humiliated was a better word for it. It was a bit shocking for the two aliens. They had really expected a lot better handling of such a minor defeat. However, even Raven, the most apathetic of the group, seemed plagued by growing anger and self-doubt. We will get them next time. Starfire tried causing the others to look their way. We should have gotten them this time. Jamie sighed out. That doesn't matter. Pull yourselves together. Wallowing in your own pity will get you nothing. Especially not pity from me. I was there and was defeated like all of you were. We are a team, right? Naruto asked. The room was silent following that, and the Hykanian felt his temper begin to climb and his frustration spike. Thankfully his comrades were reliable. They just needed some prodding from time to time, it seemed. Naruto and Starfire are right. We have to put our loss behind us. Everyone loses from time to time, but we have to learn from our losses to get better, right everyone? Batgirl asked. Right. Robin was the first to agree before he brought up all sorts of camera angles and other screens across the multitude of monitors in the room. These 7 all have minor records so far. Pretty much all of them have some minor connection to another villain or two, but they perform small stuff in comparison. A heist here. Some smuggling there. This was the first time they have ever been aggressive enough to endanger other lives. So what are you saying? They are changing up their game? Kid Flash asked from the couch where he was still icing his neck and head. Not exactly. These guys are dangerous because they have been smart. No big waves means not too much attention. Robin answered. So they only do smaller stuff and avoid collateral damage where they can't fly under the radar of the League? Jamie asked. That's probably the best guess at their thought process, but there is no way to be certain. It could be they are just beginning to escalate. Which would mean they are becoming more dangerous than they were in the past, and with those abilities Batgirl trailed off. It could be a real problem. Raven answered for the room. Naruto watched as the team came together to point out what they knew about each of the opponents and what they had figured out in the fight. All of them had something to say and help with. All of them but Cyborg. Victor clearly noticed Naruto's attention on him as he turned to face Naruto fully. He frowned deeply and narrowed his eyes at the alien boy, surprising Naruto a bit with his hostility. Just that morning he had felt like he and Cyborg were beginning to bond a little as the older boy helped him with his armor and gear issues. Now though he clearly had a bone to pick with Naruto. Just say it. Victor said, causing Naruto to blink in confusion and the conversation to die down with the rest of the team as they turned to face the two largest members of the team, slowly beginning to square up against one another. I don't know what you're talking about. Naruto honestly said, only to get the other boy to click his teeth in annoyance. Listen, I'm big enough to take it. You don't have to worry about my feelings getting hurt over whatever you want to get off your chest. Cyborg replied. Naruto turned to look at the rest of the team, honestly confused, causing Robin to step forward to try and calm things down. Sadly Cyborg cut him off before he really could say anything. Man, whatever. If you guys need me, I'll be down in the workshop. Cyborg said as he began to leave. Wait Cyborg, don't you want to stay and help us work out the strengths and weaknesses of these guys? Beast Boy asked. Why? You all saw it. I know you did. Right out the gate that little snot hit me with an overload and my machine was fried. Put my entire system into shutdown. Then you all had to worry about protecting me and fighting them. I was a liability and I have nothing to offer in here. He then turned and left before anyone could stop him. The Titans all stood staring at the door sadly for a while. The atmosphere was very awkward and the slowly uplifting morale of the team had dropped substantially once more. Thankfully Robin and Batgirl remained the excellent leaders that they were and they quickly got the impromptu team meeting back underway. Naruto continued to stare at the door though as he frowned and thought over what had just occurred. He recognized a bit of what Victor was saying. He had a better idea, perhaps more so than the others, what their friend was going through, even if he himself hadn't suffered the same. After a couple hours the team decided it was best to get some rest. They were still a little roughed up and stressed out from the events of the day, so most decided a quick shower and then a hearty night's sleep was in order. Not all of them felt that way though. Batgirl had dragged Robin to her room quietly as she was still a bit worried about how messed up he had gotten earlier in the day. Robin had insisted he'd had worse, but he wasn't about to pass up the opportunity to stay in Barbara's bed for the night. A gentle kissing session and lights out was a bit disappointing, but he supposed they just weren't there yet. Naruto on the other hand had decided he needed to have a talk with Victor about things. Even if he couldn't help him with his problems in the long run, the Helghynian wanted to clear the air between the two of them. He had the notion that Victor believed he was looking down on him after the day's events. He wanted to put that line of thought to rest as soon as possible. It wouldn't do them any good to have issues begin building up from misunderstandings after all. Stepping out into the workshop that Cyborg had claimed as his personal territory in the tower, Naruto wasn't surprised to find the older hero busy at work at his computers. He imagined the boy was looking for a way to stop such overload attacks like what was used on him today, from at least fully knocking him out of the fight in the future. A good plan, but Naruto was a bit worried that it could lead to a gradual obsession of upgrades. That most definitely wasn't what Victor needed. Not sleeping tonight? Naruto asked, causing Victor to turn his head to look up at his approaching team member. I got plenty of rest earlier today, don't you think? Victor snarked. I disagree. You got injured in a fight. You still need real rest. Naruto replied. Ah, not really. The pulse that little brat hit me with literally put me to sleep. Out cold. Cyborg tried. Are you saying Wally also was simply sleeping? Naruto asked. That's not the same and you know it. Kid had a head injury. He could have had brain damage or been killed or something. Victor replied. Seems the same to me. If that attack fried your system it could have just as easily hurt you in ways that couldn't be fixed with some time. You both could have been seriously hurt today and it's part of our place as teammates to check on one another, yes? Naruto asked. Cyborg rolled his eyes but nodded before turning back to his work. Naruto stared at him for a time. At that point was when he realized that Victor was going to be a stubborn bastard, causing him to sigh in frustration at that fact. He wanted to get some sleep too. Times like these he missed Helghy. Everything was so much more blunt and to the point there. Actually maybe that was the way to go with bringing Cyborg back around. Stop being stupid. Naruto said bluntly. Cyborg froze at what he was doing and stared ahead. Mentally Naruto berated himself for being a bit too blunt and coming across as hostile. Just leave me alone man. Cyborg growled. Do you think I look down on you because of your cybernetic implants? You are not special in that regard. I have met dozens, maybe hundreds of men and women like you. They weren't too weak to continue on though. I guess that is the main difference between a human and a Hykanian. Shut the hell up, what do you think you know about this, huh? Cyborg demanded as he swept his hand over the mechanical portions of his body. I know that you look at your machinery and see only spare parts. Your mind is in the wrong place. Naruto continued on the harsh path, finally causing Cyborg to turn back to stare Naruto in the eye. I'm asking you to please, shut up and go away, Naruto. Victor growled. Naruto stared back at the older boy. He kept his eyes locked with his friend before shaking his and simply saying no. Why not? Cyborg asked through gritted teeth. I want to say something else first. Naruto replied, causing Cyborg to sigh and shake his head. Whatever, spit it out and then leave, man. I have work to do. Fine, then. I was just going to tell you about a custom we have on Hykania. My people are divided into castes based upon their abilities. At the top are the royal and noble caste. They are frail and weak but possess great powers over the elements and with telepathy and telekinesis. Then comes my own caste, the superiors. We have stronger bodies, faster reflexes, and can also control the elements to a lesser degree than the nobles. Below that is the warriors, who are stronger and faster than our citizen caste, who are only a little stronger than your own average citizens. Naruto explained. He was happy to see that Victor was listening as he explained things. There are times where a warrior caste member distinguishes themselves enough to be uplifted into the superior caste. This takes a lot of augmentations to do so, but in the end it's just not possible for them to truly match up. At least not personally. Their children can be altered before birth so that they can be true superiors. Still, those warriors who become first-generation superiors typically end up in a very similar state to yourself. Victor's eyes widened at that information. Wait, they choose this willingly? He asked. Yes. Naruto replied smoothly. Why the hell would they cripple themselves like that? He demanded. Cripple? You think you are a cripple? Naruto asked. Why do you think I have these prosthetics? I am part machine because I have to be. Cyborg shouted. You would not be you if you didn't have the machine part. You wouldn't be able to be a hero. You wouldn't be a titan without all that. Naruto pointed out, causing Victor's mouth to turn into a solid frown. Maybe I would be okay with that. Victor said quietly. Naruto stared at Victor for a moment before slowly nodding. He then sighed to himself. This was harder than he thought it would be. There are plenty of things we don't choose in life. But choosing to be a hero and help people. That is one of the few things completely under our control. No one can or should be able to force you. Naruto said as he made to leave. Victor stared at the floor where Naruto had left from for a while until a crinkling sound caused him to look up and be surprised by the sight of Beast Boy with several bags of junk food in his arms. What are you doing down here? He asked. His voice had none of the tension it had with Naruto a moment ago. You seemed bummed out earlier and I put my foot in my mouth, so I thought I would bring some snacks down and try to make you feel better. Naruto is way better at it than me though. I was just gonna see if you wanted to play some games or something. The green teen said. Victor snorted in amusement. Don't be so sure about him being better at it than you. He didn't bring me any snacks like you did. Beast Boy grinned back at the older kid before both headed over to the couch and set up the gaming system while they gradually slipped into jokes about random things. From his place in the doorway, Naruto was happy to see Cyborg and Beast Boy getting along and Beast Boy clearly managing to lift the other boy's spirits even with something so basic. He smothered the little voice in his head, complaining about the fact that he should have just brought some chips down and given them to Cyborg and he could have already been in bed by now. Things got noticeably better with Cyborg after that. Quickly he got right back into his boisterous self with Beast Boy and they often drug Kid Flash and Blue Beetle into their various games or other activities. The team as a whole seemed to quickly recover and get back into the swing of things. They had trained harder than before and much more seriously, while Robin and Batgirl pulled every string they could to track down the crooks that had managed to give them the slip so easily. The clear desire for a rematch with the Hive was palpable. Every one of them had a score to settle, and none more so than Cyborg. The big teen had been upgrading his gear recently, and on top of that he had been spending more and more time in the training room, perfecting his gear's use in the field. Hopefully anyway. Naruto was just happy that the other boy wasn't letting one defeat hold him back and had come to better accept his robotic half. Like Naruto had said, Salty, there is much in life that can't be chosen or changed. One of them was the life of a hero though. Only the most stalwart and compassionate really belonged in such roles, and Naruto was pretty sure Cyborg fit that mold just fine. As if hoping to give them a chance to all prove themselves, the Hive decided to strike again. In broad daylight too. Just like last time, alarms blared and Titans dashed to get ready. Unlike last time however, they left in 3 separate teams. Each with a specific spot and job set in mind. Cyborg, Beast Boy, Blue Beetle and Naruto were going to head right for them into a safe spot where Raven, Starfire and Kid Flash would be waiting. The plan seemed to be going off without a hitch. The Hive saw no real reason to humiliate the Titans a second time, choosing instead to simply try and escape with their prize and let themselves essentially be herded right into the position they wanted them in. Just as they fell into the trap though, the Hive seemed to realize what was going on and they made their move to try and clear an avenue of escape. Just like last time Gizmo tried to blast Cyborg with a pulse of energy to fry his system. This time though Cyborg managed to simply avoid it, surprising the scrawny kid as in most times Cyborg had been seen on the news fighting a villain he had preferred to tank whatever it was they threw his way before either beating them down with his strength or superior firepower. Not this time Squirt. Cyborg said before letting out a loud cry of booyah and punting the small kid like a football, straight into the waiting constructs of Raven's shadowy magic. Shit, Gizmo. Jinx cried. She might fight with him the most among her team, but she also typically got along better with him between their spats. Your fight is with me, girly. Kid Flash said as he suddenly appeared beside her and landed a rapid series of blows along her side, causing her to gasp in shock and pain at the sudden attack. As he did that, Mammoth began to stumble as Naruto used the much more open area to his advantage and could launch all sorts of elemental-based attacks, such as barrages of rocks and gusts of fire at his opponent. The brute couldn't lock Naruto into a hand-to-hand fight as he had the first go-around and suffered for it. Especially when he was cornered only to receive a rough blast of energy to the back of the head from Cyborg, who had already chained up Gizmo. "Do down." Cyborg grinned. Raven and Starfire were still struggling with the combo of Kid Wicked and Billy Numerous, however sudden additions of stun splinters from Naruto and blasts of blue energy from Cyborg's cannon quickly changed that. Before long only Jinx and Seymour remained. Kid Flash had been less than merciful to Private 5, being as the boy had suplexed him earlier in the week. Still Wally knew he couldn't honestly return the favor. Private 5 was 3 times his size. Instead he used his super speed to turn the Hive member's face into a pretty good impression of abstract art. Lots of reds and purples all mushed together. "Give up, you two can't beat all of us." Robin called out to Jinx and Seymour. The pale girl seemed to think about it for a moment. The Titans had adapted to her team way faster than she expected them to. Her hopes had been to bag a couple more scores here in Jump City before moving towns. Now she felt humiliated with how quickly the Titans had flipped things around on them. "I'd rather fight," Jinx replied with a scowl. "I'd rather not fight, though," Raven said before both Jinx and Seymour were suddenly pinned under a black band of energy. "You win some, you lose some," Batgirl said with a smirk before she and Naruto used their tools to knock the two criminals out. The Titans were silent for a moment as they realized they had easily beaten their opponents. Smiles quickly began to spread on their faces before Beast Boy broke the building mood with a whoop of victory and the team all began laughing or animatedly chattering with one another. This was it. Their first real victory as a team. Somehow losing to the Hive previously made it seem all the sweeter. Starfire swirled around Raven, taking the younger girl's ear off, though she wasn't complaining. Even Raven was riding the high of their victory at the moment. Naruto walked over to Cyborg while the rest of the team laughed and talked. It wouldn't be long before authorities arrived to take the Hive members into custody, so they would just relax and bask in the win until then. "How are you feeling right now?" Naruto asked the bigger boy. Victor snorted. "Pretty damn good. You made some good points the other day I guess. I was hoping it might help. Compared to taking out 3 of the Hive personally, it was probably a little lacking though." Naruto chuckled. "Nah." Cyborg shook his head. "I got the last hit, but all of that was teamwork. What you said did mean a lot to me, man." Naruto grinned. "I have been reading more things from Earth lately to try and better understand it here. You could say the Titans are greater than the sum of our parts, yes?" Cyborg nodded. That made sense to him. "You're the same, right? Better altogether than you would be otherwise?" Naruto asked. Victor nodded, though more slowly this time. Naruto took note of that. He doubted that this was the absolute end of his friend's issues with becoming a cyborg. That was okay though. He had the team to lean on when he needed them. Naruto and Cyborg went to help transfer the Hive 5+2 into police custody. Then they planned to convince Robin and Batgirl that pizza was most definitely necessary for celebrating their win. Jinx sat in her cell and glared up at the detention center's ceiling. As far as places to be locked up, this one wasn't terrible. A juvenile detention center specifically geared toward kids and teens with abilities, it was a hell of a lot better than an actual prison. Despite that, the guards were plenty harsher than they would be with normal juvie inmates. Jinx was used to that though. You don't end up under the Hive umbrella of scumbags without having a past of illegal activities. She knew what to expect here. Her mind wasn't thinking on that though, or even how to escape or get in contact with the boys' half of the facility to figure a plan out with her team. No, her mind was centered on one fact. She had been humiliated by those Teen Titan pukes. That simply wouldn't do. It couldn't stand. Her original plan had been to run a few heists and complete a few jobs, then leave Jump City behind them. The amount of free rein that her boss had given her with the team was honestly pretty crazy. As long as she gave them their cut, they didn't care what she was doing. That added to the humiliation she had suffered at the hands of the Titans though. No doubt her boss and Gizmo would both give her plenty of flack for what had happened. So that meant one thing. She wasn't going anywhere. Oh, she planned to break out of this joint, but Jump City. If the Titans were going to be here, then she was going to be here. She hardly flinched when the door to her cell slammed open and her boss looked over her. He was a taskmaster, but he was leagues better than most criminals she could find herself in the employ of. "You were supposed to be committing crimes that kept you under the radar," he said, simply causing her to click her teeth. "We were. These Titans are pouncing on purse snatchers and bank robbers alike." She crossed her arms. The man stared down at her emotionlessly. Slowly he began to nod though. "So you have found your rivals then? Someone to sharpen your team against until they are ready for the big stuff," he commented. He didn't ask. "Yes," she answered. "Good. I will find a place for your crew and you to stay until I get a permanent position set up for you. Come along, we need to retrieve your compatriots," he commented before turning and walking out. Jinx grinned and followed after him with a slight jaunt in her step. She was a bit worried he wouldn't approve of her messing around in Jump City and feuding with these Teen Titans. Now that she knew she had his backing though, all sorts of terrible deeds swirled in her head. "This is not as good as the pizza, but it is still quite pleasant," Starfire said between bites of the peanut butter and mustard sandwich. "Do you want to try mine?" Naruto asked while offering over the bun with chicken Alfredo smothered in Tabasco sauce. "Only if you try mine as well," she chirped. The rest of the team struggled desperately to ignore the meals their colleagues were eating, though Wally did seem a bit curious about how Naruto's sandwich tasted. They were all enjoying the fact that the kitchen in the tower was not only operational but also fully stocked now. Naruto and Starfire both had made it clear that they were happy with the fact they could have real meals and had both been trying as many Earth dishes as possible, as well as forging some Frankenstein monster-style meals as well. "I can't tell if it's cute or gross." Barbara sighed lightly. "Definitely gross," Raven supplied before turning back to her own very simple meal of a salad. "It could always be both. Right?" Cyborg said, trying not to judge the tastes of his two teammates too badly. Plus it was kind of nice seeing the two of them so close. Before the conversation could continue, alarms went off and Robin stormed into the room almost a single heartbeat later, with his face set into a scowl. "Gear up everyone. The Hive 5 have gotten free again and are hitting another target," Robin bellowed. Those in the kitchen frowned and in some cases even poured. This was roughly the fourth time in the last 2 months since the same team of villains had broken free somehow and begun wreaking havoc. They were all starting to get a bit tired of it. "Let's go, Titans. Beast Boy is already changing into his uniform and we need to move," Robin said, getting the others to abandon their partially consumed meals and begin rushing to get dressed. Barbara paused briefly beside Robin as the others headed for their rooms. They had already spoken of the topic before, but by now neither could deny it. "Someone is letting them loose every time we bring them in. We aren't going to make any real headway as long as that continues," Barbara said. "What do you want me to say, Barb? Just go get ready, we need to hurry. I'll brief you all on the way," he replied. "Don't take that tone with me," she snapped, causing him to sigh. Either way, she raced off to get ready to take on their team's recurring opponents. Robin soon headed down to the vehicles and was joined along the way by his teammates. Naruto was the last of the group. His armor wasn't exactly an easy thing to assemble on his body. Luckily the opposite was true for Starfire, and she happily acted as a spare set of hands to quickly place his armor on. "We may need to speak with friend Cyborg about some mechanism to hasten this process," Starfire commented as she finished buckling the pauldrons into his suit. "Agreed. Thank you for helping me, Cory," Naruto said with a toothy smile. "I am happy to help," she smiled back. "That's sweet, but we need to go," Robin barked. "I am in the vehicle and Coriander can fly, Robin," Naruto said with a deadpan look, causing the other boy to scowl. "I can't close the top of the car until she moves," Robin snapped before dropping into his seat and starting the engine up. "I will activate my communicator to stay in touch. Since I don't know where it is that we are supposed to go," Starfire said with the latter half somewhat under her breath, though the entire team clearly heard her over the communicator system. The custom vehicle shut its lid and roared to life before Robin gunned the engine and rocketed down the tunnel beneath the bay toward Jump City proper. He clearly heard Starfire but ignored her. "Mostly. You all want to mess around, then do it later. We have a job to do," he said, only to be interrupted before he could begin briefing the team. "Relax, dude. We've beaten the hive like a ton of times. They only beat us once because they had the drop on us. Beast Boy said with a grin that could be heard in his voice. That could just as easily be flipped around on us. Listen, alright. Take this seriously, this isn't a game. We are doing serious hero work here, and Robin began to lecture. Robin. Brief us already, talk down to us later. Batgirl cut him off. Or just don't talk down to us at all. Cyborg added with some serious heat in his voice. Robin audibly heaved a sigh out as he reeled in his desire to lecture them all. We don't know how the hive escaped again, but we know that this time they haven't targeted a bank or a financial center at all. Instead they are raiding the Mace chemical plant on the north side of the city. They haven't attacked civilians directly, thankfully, but they had purposefully damaged a lot of the more volatile chemical containers. Some of the team winced at that. Maybe Robin had a reason to be so worked up. Why attack the plant though? What do they gain from simply destroying the facility? Naruto asked. Good question. At first I was confused as well, but I soon realized that only some of the hive is hitting the plant. Cameras caught all but Gizmo and Jinx present. I don't think that they are there at all. Robin explained. A distraction. Raven realized. That's my guess. Robin agreed. Then we need to keep an eye out for whatever they are planning. Batgirl said. Exactly so, Starfire, Raven, Beast Boy. I want you all high up in the air keeping an eye out. We can't risk whatever they have planned going how they want it to. And the rest of us get to smack around the rest of the hive. Cyborg said happily. This is going to be another walk in the park. No matter what they have planned. Kid Flash said over his comms, running alongside the vehicle. Maybe, either way, scout it out kid, tell us what you can find. Batgirl ordered. You got it. The boy replied before shooting off toward the plant. Jinx grinned as Kid Flash appeared suddenly among the rest of her team. He started running his mouth, probably saying something snarky before speeding around the rest of the hive too quickly for anything to be done about it. There's the first one. She said. This plan is not going to work, Jinx. Even if it does we won't get even half of the slime the client is paying us for. The teen girl twitched as the whiny voice of her partner in crime entered her ears. He really got on her nerves every time he opened his mouth. You would be right if the trucks I'm having you steal were the only ones, but they aren't. Just do as you are told, Gizmo. For once in your pathetic waste of a life. I'm actually asking nicely. Jinx said between clenched teeth. She was tired of being questioned by this pipsqueak at every turn. Nicely? That's such bullshit. The rat complained loudly. It's nicer than me trying to set you on fire, right? She asked. Gizmo sneered at her but quieted down. If he would just stay that way she would actually probably enjoy working with him. Probably not, but who knows. Here we go, there is the rest of the team. Get going. She commanded. She ignored the floating boy flipping her the bird as she continued to stare through her binoculars at the scene unfolding at the Mace facility. Most of the other Titans had arrived. They were tearing her boys apart as well. Even with 3 of their members absent, the Titans clearly had her comrades handled. Then again her guys weren't trying to really take the Titans out at the moment, just drag the fight out. Just as she wanted. Everything was going right for once, and all she had to do was remain patient. Sooner enough, from inside the Mace Central building, 3 crudely constructed trucks with drone pilots controlled by Gizmo burst free from the receiving section and made for the freeway. Of course it was short-lived for one of the trucks. Blue Beetle was quick to act, and with the arrival of a giant green squid in the middle of the road, they stopped the rearmost vehicle. The second was stopped by a black field of energy that tore its wheels off, and the third was forced to dodge green bolts of energy launched by Starfire as she began to strafe through the air behind the truck as it fled. Good luck, Gizmo. She snorted with humor before turning and striding off toward a separate facility. A smaller, more specialized chemical plant owned by the little-known Collins Chemical Company. The 3C specialized in a small handful of industrial solvents, one of which was very expensive compared to the rest. Alright everyone, looks like we are safe, the Teen Titans have those hive creeps handled so we can get back to work and make those deliveries. Jinx said with a smile. Whatever you say Miss Collins. One of the foremen replied. Jinx smiled. It had taken a lot out of her and she had needed a hand beforehand in putting an illusion into the head of all the workers here. Thankfully while most of her team was drawing the attention away she had been able to cast her spells one after another on the drivers. As she climbed in with the first truck and the convoy of 4 semi-trucks headed out, she smiled at the sight of the Titans rounding up her team. They would be back out in a couple days and their heist had gone off without a hitch. They tricked us. Robin all but roared as the team returned. The others weren't pleased either, but Robin was doing a pretty good job of turning everyone's bad mood against him personally. Naruto wasn't sure if that was the other boys' intention or not though. He could see the use in giving them a target to vent toward, but that probably wasn't the best course of action. Especially when it really was his fault. He had ordered Starfire and Raven both in, rather than leaving one of them to watch for something. None of them noticed the overloaded trucks casually driving right past the fight. Even though all other traffic had stopped and the drivers fled, the workers from the 3C company just casually continued on, being led along by Jinx's ability to create illusions and weaken her target's ability to think logically. We should have realized something more was going on when Jinx wasn't there. Robin continued. It was a double fake out, man. They played us well. At least all the workers were fine. Even if all those chemicals were stolen. Jamie pointed out. What do they even need all of that goo for anyway? Beast Boy asked. Nothing good, little dude. That's for sure. Cyborg said. I doubt they will use it themselves. I think that we are going to start seeing the Hive go after more than just banks and armored trucks. They're probably taking jobs now. Batgirl commented. Which means now that they have a win like this under their belt, they will be pulling even more contracts. Kid Flash grumbled. Why did you call down Starfire and Raven? We could have grabbed Gizmo and all of those trucks while one of them stayed. Jamie asked. I thought that they were both on those trucks. Robin said. He was clearly angry with himself. It doesn't matter. We need to figure out who wanted that slime stuff and why they needed so much. 4 tanker trucks full is nothing small. Batgirl pulled the focus back onto their tasks at hand. We should also keep an eye out to see how it is that the Hive team keeps being let loose. Naruto added in. Exactly. They are all currently being held at. Batgirl began before she reached over to activate the alert on her datapad. The audio was already connected to the rest of the team's communication gear, so they all heard the robotic voice report the sudden release and disappearance of the captured members of the Hive. Just like that. Like the cell doors had been opened and they had simply been let go. I don't understand. How does this keep happening? The facility is secure. Starfire said. Because the Hive have friends in high places. Robin said, not with a snarl but a sigh. Everyone get some rest. He said as he headed toward his room. The others looked between one another while Batgirl quickly pursued after him. One by one they slunk off to their own rooms as well, feeling even more defeated than the first time that the Hive had beaten them. Jinx knelt as the hooded figure before her seemed to stare down at her with endless patience and apathy. She knew that they were happy to keep her kneeling on the uneven and painful floor while they continued their work on the computer. It had been nearly half an hour since she knelt here, and by now she could feel nothing but the pain coursing through her knees and shins from the rough knobs sticking randomly out of the floor. Ah, now onto you Jinx was it? The man in the hood asked. He knew very well who she was. She knew very well that he did as well. It was all a game, but one she had grown used to, unfortunately. As it stood she may have been the master's current favorite pastime, but his enigmatic interest fluctuated at unknowable times. Even if she was his current favorite though, such status did not protect her from his vaunted council of 7 or his mistress. All of whom she imagined were as depraved and sadistic as the unknown man before her was. Yes, I have completed the task as the master wished. The chemicals were delivered and the rest of my team have received their cuts. They think the trucks were delivered to some contractor just as the master wished. She said clearly. The master hardly cares for the minutiae of what was done, only that the task he set out for you was in fact completed. I however do have an interest in the way you did things. Like the reason you used your team as such expendable fodder. Are they not imperative for your success within the Hive? His voice was higher pitched as he questioned her. Clearly goading her into saying something he could punish her for. They had a purpose as a distraction. It allowed the easy theft of the target and was of little issue thanks to our contacts. Jinx said only to lock up as she felt herself pushed down into the floor by an invisible force. My contacts, you ungrateful wretch. My contacts repeatedly used to liberate your little team of nigh on useless children. The same ones used to liberate you time and again. Were it not the express wish of the master that you be educated and helped along like the mentally deficient girl that you are, well I would have left you to rot. The man said before casually releasing whatever had suddenly pressed Jinx against the floor so painfully. As it is, after some discussion with the master it has been decided that you need a new lesson. If you consider your teammates to be so expendable you must learn what to do should you not have access to one anymore on a much more permanent basis. Pick one of your peons the least useful if you are wise and kill them. Return the corpse here so that I might extract what little knowledge I can from such a base creature. As the man continued to speak, eventually ending things with a blunt dismissal, Jinx mentally froze. The words he had said so simply to her shook her very core. So far she had managed to get this far in her life and career without having to actually kill someone. Not even civilians had found themselves as collateral damage during her jobs. The master had initially commended her on such restraint. Her powers and skills could easily snuff out a life, and they both knew it. However, where she claimed it was simply to keep her off of the list of the likes of the Justice League, the Master had admired her supposed efficiency. That was something that struck her harshly now though. She knew, from the very start, that she would have to kill someone for the Master and the Hive. She wasn't excited by that, but she had more or less been certain it wouldn't matter much in the end. It would have to happen, if only to prove her willingness to do whatever the Master commanded of her. She just never thought it would be one of her subordinates. One of her teammates that would have to be the sacrifice. At least it would be an easy choice. She hated that little twerp Gizmo anyway. Except the hooded man was right. She needed to remember each of her people had uses, and as much as she hated him, Gizmo had by far the most use. That meant the little brat couldn't be the one to go. Not to mention, once she did this the Titans would have even more of an advantage over her team. I have an issue. She suddenly said, drawing the man's attention again. Oh, you're still here. What? He asked with an annoyed tone. I need a way to even the playing field against the Titans. I will be down a man, and I can't be seen to kill one of them, the League will come crashing down onto us before the corpse cools off. Jinx explained. The hooded man sat still. Completely still. I can see your reasoning. Very well, I will forward a contact to you and make some adjustments to the Hive's budget. Be wary with this contact, Jinx. Should you or your motley crew manage to antagonize him, the Hive and the Master will not consider you a worthwhile venture and leave you to be terminated. I understand. She said. We will see. Now get out. He said before turning his attention back to monitors that Jinx couldn't see. Jinx stared at the rest of her team as they laughed and bantered. They mocked one another but never too harshly. Enjoying burgers and fries that had been delivered to the abandoned warehouse above their hideout. She felt her eyes burn and a lump in her throat as she stared out at them. Her choice was already made and she knew how she was going to handle things. Starting down the stairs toward her team, Jinx paused as Seymour saw her first and waved, followed by all the rest of them. How was the meeting with the boss? He happy with how we pulled a fast one on those Teen Titan posers? Gizmo cackled. Jinx opened her mouth to reply but clamped it shut to try and swallow down the lump in her throat. Jinx? One of the others asked. You need to do it, girl. Your boss told me so, either you do what he wants or I start shortening the list for you to pick from. A dark voice said from behind a metallic mask. Well, what the fuck? Gizmo cried as the Terminator, Deathstroke, stepped out of the shadows behind Jinx. Who is this guy and what's he talking about? Billy demanded while jumping to his feet. The gun suddenly pointed at his skull had him drop back into the seat just as quickly with a nervous look in his eyes. Choose one. Deathstroke commanded, causing the boys to all stare at Jinx in shock. I already have. She said tightly. It took all she had to fight back tears as understanding slid across the faces of her boys. She didn't say anything more as her hands flickered outward from her sides rapidly, and in a brief moment Private 5 found his body suddenly igniting as mystical flames bubbled up through his flesh and spread across his form. The entire room seemed to freeze and watch in silence as the boy screamed in agony for a few short moments before collapsing and dying on the floor. He kept burning though, even as the stench of his body hit them all, and a couple of the team lost their fight with their stomach to throw up. Jinx didn't, however. She didn't cry, she didn't puke, she didn't try to set Deathstroke on fire. She simply stood there and watched as her teammate and maybe her former friend died by her hand. Is that enough? Will you go do what you're being paid to do now? She asked. I was paid for this too. Don't think I came here to watch you without a reason. Doesn't matter now though. I'm going to handle the rest of the job now. He said before disappearing up the stairs, once again leaving Jinx with the terrified and betrayed expressions of her team staring at her. That girl was in a terrible mood. She was doing all that she could to distract herself with work. Sadly, it wasn't making much of an impact. After their loss against the Hive, she had tried to talk to Robin, but he had snapped at her and pretty much sealed himself away. She could only imagine he was probably doing the same as her and trying to figure out who all was involved in freeing the Hive team. Hopefully he was having better luck than her. Well, maybe if he was pulling his hair out in frustration she would be a bit more pleased. The way he had snapped at her earlier had pissed her off. Still, she wondered if he was hitting the same wall she was. It was the same in every case. The guards on duty lose track of time for an hour, all the cameras and monitoring equipment similarly just seemed to pause for an hour. No recollection, nothing. Not even the slightest sign of struggle. Of course she found no sign of struggle, there was none. However, her theory of it being someone high up letting them loose felt flimsy now. All it took was some sort of powered individual that could somehow cause all the guards and cameras to blank out for an hour and the Hive were free to go. It also meant that whoever this was wasn't limited to freeing the Five. She needed to look through similar crimes across Jump City to hopefully find anything. Sadly, that was where she was really hitting the wall. There was nothing. It was mind-numbing. She needed a break. Luckily it seemed some of the others were headed out to various places to eat or hang out. She was pleased to see Cyborg and Beast Boy talking about going to the arcade, while Kid Flash and Jamie were trying to get the group all together to grab some pizza again. "So we all want to head out. Want to go together or split up?" Batgirl asked the group. "Well, Raven already headed out to some bookstore in the city, Robin's still locked up in his room I think," Wally said with a sigh. Barbara scowled slightly at that before shaking her head. "Raven will probably be happier to browse the books anyway. We can see if she wants to catch up for a meal later. As for Robin, leave him. He's in a mood. If you say so, hey, we could use this as a chance to show Naruto and Starfire around the city properly. Every time we have tried in the past we get interrupted," Wally said with a grin. "That would be much appreciated. I am very interested in the arcade. Cyborg and Beast Boy have both told us much about it," Starfire chirped. "I am also a bit hungry." Naruto agreed to going out. "Then let's go, someone send Raven a message to see if she wants to eat with us," Batgirl said as they all headed for the door. "I am glad we decided to get these burritos instead. You were right, Beast Boy, these are wonderful," Naruto happily said after swallowing down a second burrito. "That's great dude. I'm glad you like it," Beast Boy replied, somehow out-eating all the others despite being much smaller than them. "I have to admit, they are pretty good," Raven said as she slowly worked on her own burrito. Naruto grinned toward her. It was nice that they could all get out and come together like this. He wished that Robin had joined them, but the boy seemed incredibly determined to figure out who was working with the hive. At least they had finally gotten to see most of the city without interruption this time. The arcade, the bookstore that Raven enjoyed, several very nice parks. Naruto and Starfire were intent to also visit the mountain trails that were just outside the city. Kid Flash had told them they were a great place to hike according to all of the reviews he had seen. "I have to say, I'm pretty happy that Jump City was the place we all ended up together in. The weather is nice almost all year round and the people are really friendly for the most part. I can't even complain that most of what we do is handle non-super criminals. It's kind of refreshing to just be helping people and not going toe-to-toe against someone trying to black out the sun or something," Jamie commented. "Amen to that," Barbara agreed. "So what next?" Cyborg asked the group, brushing his hands off after finishing his meal. Well, Cory and I were hoping that she and I could perhaps go to the mountain trails," Naruto said. "That sounds like fun I guess." Beast Boy shrugged. "I'm sorry friend Beast Boy, but Naruto and I were hoping to perhaps go alone," Starfire said with an awkward look. "What? Why would you?" Beast Boy began before Raven jabbed him in the side. Oh, cool, well the rest of us can go to the mall or something. Right, guys?" Beast Boy asked. "Yeah," Barbara said before standing up. "I hope." She was cut off from wishing the possibly new couple good luck as the sound of a rifle cracked loudly and their little break was ruined. The Titan Tower had been quiet for a while. Arguments, laughter and conversation had filled its halls and rooms even just so soon after the formation of the team, but now it was eerily silent. Doors hissed and thudded as they opened and closed. Footsteps clicked up and down the halls as the Titans moved about. The training room could often be heard even into the main levels of the tower as various members of the team worked to improve themselves. Still the silence was always present. The television yammered on and on about one inane thing or other, but no one seemed to hear it. No one truly watched it either. Naruto was unsure how to best handle the situation. He had lost comrades before. Many comrades. He had dealt with wounded and dead brothers and sisters in arms for years. The Titans hadn't. Even those that were more hardened and experienced had rarely dealt with the actual loss of a comrade right before their eyes. Currently tension was high. None of the Titans knew how to console one another. Perhaps they hadn't been together long enough to properly understand how they all dealt with their emotions. Naruto, like most of the others, had chosen to give the members of the team space. So he watched them. His teammates tried hard to go on with their normal daily lives as best as they could. Some managed better than others. Starfire hadn't known their teammates for any longer than Naruto, and despite being a very empathetic and loving person by nature, she simply didn't have the close bond some of the others did. Similarly, both Cyborg and Raven hadn't been close to the victim of the attack yet, either. The three of them had largely returned to their normal routine. Quieter and a bit more grim than before, but back to normal nevertheless. Beast Boy was in an odd position as he had dealt with immense loss in his life. Naruto easily identified that concealed beneath the younger boy's friendly and cheerful demeanor. It was harsh to admit, but like Naruto, his experience with loss made him more than able to deal with the situation they found themselves in. Others were not so lucky. Kid Flash, Robin, and Batgirl had all known their friend for some time. They had worked together and invited him into the team because of that. Kid Flash especially had been close to the other boy. He disappeared from the tower for nearly a week after the event. Thankfully, unlike most of them, Kid Flash had a mentor that was very involved with his life and able to help him with his troubles. That left Batgirl and Robin the most deeply affected, even if it didn't seem to be the case upon first looks. Batgirl, as it turned out, had been the actual target of the assassin. Jamie had saved her life because his symbiote suit, or whatever the alien tool he used to fight crime, had given him warning of a rifle's fire just in time. Kid Flash would have been able to move the girl out of the way of the bullet if he had known. He didn't have the sensory abilities of the suit though. Naruto could still picture the horrified look on Barbara's face as Jamie placed himself in front of her and attempted to shell himself in his armor. His helmet barely snapped up in time to save his life. However, it hadn't fully covered him and the bullet fragmented on impact. In the time since the attack, the team had been able to figure out it was Deathstroke the Terminator that had taken the shot. Though they still hadn't found the man themselves and they didn't have the first clue as to why he had targeted Barbara. Jamie was out of the hospital. He wasn't okay though. His family had brought him home with the help of a hospice company. The boy was still in a coma and unlikely to wake up. Kid Flash visited almost every day. Here at the tower, Naruto imagined it was just as quiet as the room where Jamie was left to possibly sleep for the rest of his natural life. He didn't know what to do about it though. He couldn't force the team to get over something like that. He didn't think someone should truly get over it either. He recalled every friend he had lost, if not every comrade. The war with the Citadel took too many lives for him to remember every soldier that had died under his command, but he did remember the friends that had been slain. Was Jamie a friend? Maybe not yet, but he would have been. Naruto knew that they would have been good friends. Especially someone willing to take a blow for their comrades like that. He had the superior's respect forever for that single act. Unfortunately, unable to do anything about the situation left Naruto in a sort of limbo. Watching. Waiting. Listening. The team was eventually going to crack somewhere, he had his money on it being Robin. Batgirl may have been there. She may have been splattered by her friend's blood as he took a shot meant for her. She may be scarred permanently with that feeling of guilt. She had been there though. She had gotten him to the hospital. She had organized the attempt to capture Deathstroke. She had stayed with him even as his family arrived at the hospital and the doctor delivered the horrible news of Jamie's coma. Robin hadn't been there. He'd been caught up in his own thing. He hadn't made time for his team. He hadn't been there when someone took a shot at his girlfriend. That someone being an enemy he had faced more than once before only made it worse. The team leader hadn't been there when the team had been attacked and lost a member. Naruto wasn't even sure if Robin had been to see their fallen comrade since his initial visit. The tension over the team was nothing compared to the tension beginning to form between the two team leaders. Something Naruto grimaced about as he saw Barbara crossing her arms and staring at until the boy sighed and followed her out of the main rec room of the tower. He was tired of watching all of this. Most of them were, but he could at least save himself and another from having to sit around here and wait this feeling out. Hori. He called out to his fellow alien who perked up slightly from where she was silently sitting beside Raven. The Dark One almost seemed like she wanted to thank him for getting the other girl's attention. Starfire had been silently following the other girl around for days now. Yes? Starfire asked. We had planned to go and see the nature trails on the mountain. At least before everything happened. Naruto said as he stood up from his seat and set aside the third-grade world history textbook that he had been pretending to read. It would have been very enjoyable. Starfire's smile was small and brittle. It would still be a good time if we went together, right? He asked suddenly, feeling a little less confident. That trepidation died as Starfire's smile became more pronounced and bright. She nodded and glided across the room to snatch his hand before they both headed for the elevator. They were intent on having a good time together after weeks spent in communal misery with the rest of their team. At least their time together would likely be better than whatever Barbara had planned for her and. Barbara kept her arms tightly crossed around her chest as she led toward a more private portion of the tower, usually only used for training or meditation for those members of the team that practiced such a thing. It was actually most of them. Bolly went to see the Reyes family again. He'll be back tonight. She said suddenly. She wasn't sure why, maybe just to try and start some kind of conversation without immediately diving into what they actually needed to discuss. Only nodded. That had been the problem she needed to discuss. The fact that they didn't seem to discuss anything anymore. At all. Barbara paused a moment to wipe at her face. She knew there was nothing there. Even after her hand came away clean and she glanced at it, there was nothing there. She could still feel the sticky blood from her friend though. What did you need to talk about? Asked. Somewhere to be. Barbara asked a bit harsher than she had meant. Sighed. She knew he had been avoiding her because he felt guilty about not being there when the team needed him. She didn't want him to blame himself for that, but she needed him now. She couldn't keep being the one to make the effort. It's been weeks since Jamie got. Barbara swallowed thickly before setting her jaw to continue. I need you to scale back the search for Deathstroke. She knew he would react badly before she said it, but it had to be said. She wasn't the only one that had recognized Robin was even more absent from interacting with members of the team. His one-track dedication to finding the man who had harmed his team was becoming an obsession. How can you say that? Robin bit out gruffly. Because I have to. We are supposed to be a team, Robin. She tried to point out. He wasn't listening though. We are a team. One that's down a member because that fucking psycho is out there still, Barb. It has to be my #1 priority. You can manage the things with the others. Superior and Starfire can't do much to help an investigation here, they barely understand what it means to shake someone's hand on Earth. Cyborg and Beast Boy aren't exactly the detective types, don't get me started on Raven, and Kitty is where he needs to be. Explained his position. It was Barbara's turn to sigh. She could see what he was saying. It pissed her off because she felt like that was just leaving the team to stagnate, but she saw what he was saying still. The problem was he was still missing her point. I need you to keep the team running while I focus on the investigation. If he hadn't been trying to get to you then maybe our roles could be flipped, but you know that it's best like this. He continued. It wasn't the right thing to say though. How the hell you can be one of the smartest people I know and still be a complete idiot is shocking, Grayson. Sure, continue your investigation. When you finally turn up a lead, I'm sure we'll all rest easier that Deathstroke died from old age while you were busy chasing him. Barbara ground out angrily. Don't lash out at me because you're angry about how things happened. I know you feel guilty, but it's not your fault that Jamie. Robin began only to stop when his head snapped to the side from her slapping him. Don't imply you get how I feel. Don't act like you know what I think about what happened. You haven't talked to me about it at all, so it's not like you get to. Barbara forced a breath of air out and tried to recompose herself. Simply ribbed his cheek before sighing and turning to leave. Not before saying one last thing as if he wanted to piss her off even more. It's okay to feel angry and upset right now, Barb. We have to focus on our job though. We will bring Deathstroke and whoever is behind him in. I can promise that. He then slipped through the door and closed it behind him. He was wise to do so. If he had stayed, Barbara was unsure if she could have stopped herself from dragging him into an impromptu sparring session. The idiot boy didn't understand what she was trying to tell him at all. Sure, she needed his help with the team, but when she had said they were meant to be a team, she had meant the two of them. She just needed someone to listen. She wasn't even sure why, but for weeks now she'd just swallowed down everything that had happened and pushed on. It didn't help that had pretty much dropped everything on her and bailed on his own little quest for revenge. That was all it was in the end. He wasn't after justice, he was angry that it happened when he wasn't there and intent on bringing down Deathstroke. Perhaps even more frustrating was the fact that was dancing around the idea that she needed to be kept back and safe. She didn't need that. That was the point of being a hero. They wore targets on their backs and dove into danger willingly. Collecting herself, Barbara left to go and try to do something productive. Anything to take her mind off of the stewing issues that they were facing. Wally had said goodbye to the Reyes family for the day and could have raced back to the tower, but he wanted some time alone first and decided to stop his run short and just wander along the natural trails outside of Jump City proper. There was a nearby nature preserve that was pretty popular with tourists and locals alike. It had a camping area too. He wasn't normally one to be all that interested in taking in nature or that sort of thing. Right now the peace and quiet was a nice change of pace though. Jamie wasn't exactly Wally's best friend, but he was closer to the boy than any of the other Titans were. He felt kind of responsible because of that. Well, that and the fact that if he had known what was happening he could have gotten them all out of danger without anyone getting hurt. It was useless thinking about that though. He couldn't change the past yet. Barry had mentioned that they might be able to pull some really crazy stuff with the Speed Force, but as bad as things were, messing with reality like that and altering time could make things end up a lot worse. Groaning, he flopped down on a large log that had been rolled off of the path by park rangers or something. It was kind of like a natural bench now. Perfect for him to plop down and consider how messed up things were really. He didn't sit for long before he realized that this part of the national park was a bit different. As in it had seen better days. Oh man, this is where Starfire and Superior landed. He said as he bolted right back to his feet. That explained why the large tree had to be removed from the path. A deep trench had been cut through the ground and some craters surrounded it. The ships were all gone of course, but there was plenty of obvious evidence from the crash. Man, they are lucky to be alive. He murmured as he set out to better check out the depression in the ground. It must have been a wild ride. He kind of wished he could have experienced it. Like the most thrilling roller coaster ride. Just with a sort of crappy ending. He followed along the path of destruction for a ways before stopping at the main crater. The main part of the ship that they had escaped from had probably crashed here. The smaller craters were probably from all of the bits that broke off in the escape pods. It was surprising that the government or maybe the Justice League were able to find and retrieve all the pieces. It covered a huge area. Wally really would have liked a piece of the alien ship, well, not counting the parts used in the construction of Titan Tower. Embracing the prospect of a distraction from the depressing things he had been mostly thinking about lately, Wally began to poke around for a little souvenir. It was a lot of ground to cover even with his powers though. He wasn't the only one looking for alien tech in the woods today though. He luckily managed to notice that fact before he walked out in front of the band of rough-looking thugs shuffling through the underbrush. It's been 3 days since we found any leftovers of that alien crap. Does your boss actually think we will find anything out here still? One of the scavengers asked. Wally noticed that the ones actually doing all the work all looked especially rougher around the edges. In fact, he was pretty confident that they were all junkies of some kind or other. The guys that looked to be overseeing them were definitely different though, and definitely armed with guns and knives. You want your shit, you find that alien shit for us. Don't whine and bitch. Just do your job. The leader of the crew replied before pulling out a bottle of water and taking a drag. The scavengers seemed to collectively scowl at him as he did so, but they did as they were told and continued to search. They turned over every rock and stone and even dug at the ground in a couple places. Like the boss said, you want something done fast and efficient, just promise a junkie you'll give him a free ride. One of the other men laughed. Yeah. Worked great at first, but you shitheads may have picked the woods clean. Everything those fucking capes and Uncle Sam missed has probably already been found. The apparent leader said before slipping an obvious burner phone out of his pocket and stepping away from the group to make a call. Never wanted super hearing more than right now, except for when Kid Flash mumbled before his mind slipped back to the shooting. He needed to keep his head on straight and in the present. As he recollected himself, the crew boss was returning to the center of the group with the other 2 armed thugs. He nodded at his fellow criminals before clearing his throat. Talk to the boss. He agrees you all probably picked this heap clean for us. So come over here and get paid. Last day bonus, courtesy of Cinderblock. He called out, getting the junkies to quickly stop their searches and head over toward him. Wei blinked in surprise at that. What the hell was Cinderblock doing in Jump City, and why did he have people scavenging alien tech for him? That screamed of a bigger operation. He gasped as the thugs opened up on the junkies as they fell in for their payment. It was over in an instant, a dozen people slaughtered right in front of him. That wouldn't go unanswered. Wally burst free from his hiding place so fast that the leaves tore free from the branches and kicked up into a cyclone behind him. The first of the thugs was flipped over through the air from the force of Wally's punch. After 2 flips through air, he planted onto the dirt with a thud and groaned deeply as consciousness left him. The second didn't even have time to react to seeing his fellow criminal ragdolled. Wally yanked his legs out from under him, forcing his head to bounce off of the dirt hard enough to put him to sleep, as well as probably breaking his jaw. That left the apparent leader of the crew that did the dumbest possible thing to try and get away. He simply ran. It was like he was hardly moving to Wally. Still, it made it easy for the teenage hero plant both of his hands into the man's back and send him face first into the ground. Maybe he didn't put all that much power behind the blow to make sure he didn't accidentally kill the man, or maybe the guy was just sturdier than he looked. Either way, as the man bounced on the ground, he tucked himself into a roll and brought the gun in his hands up to snap around off toward Wally. It never came close to hitting high, but it did force the Titan back before he looped around to strike at the thug from the side at speeds he couldn't keep up with. Wally very nearly crashed into the bulky form of his fellow Titan as Naruto dropped down onto the criminal and brutally cracked him across the back of the head. Veering to the left, Wally stumbled to a stop and turned to face Naruto. Starfire floated down to the earth beside him with her eyes sadly taking in the scene of the murdered junkies. "What are you guys doing here?" Wally asked. "We were enjoying the trails, then we heard gunfire and Corey carried me here to see what was happening. We weren't far away and saw you take down the first 2. Naruto quickly explained as he began taking the guns from each of the men and tying them up with some of the wire Cyborg had given him for capturing criminals. Why would you two? Naruto, is that lipstick?" Wally asked as his mind processed a pair of smears on Naruto's lips and cheek. He asked before wiping at the smudges. Starfire hurried over and began cleaning it off with her finger. Her own lips looked a bit smudged. "It is my fault. Friend Barbara showed me a brand that she said looked good on me. I was showing Naruto when we were interrupted," Starfire explained. The actual heat and annoyance in her tone was actually the first time Wally had heard the girl sound legitimately annoyed. "Well, a good thing you guys happened to be nearby," Wally said. He had it under control, but help was appreciated. "Sadly, we weren't here in time to stop that." Naruto sighed as he looked at the dead victims. "Yeah. These guys just shot them up like it was nothing. They are going away for a long time for this, but they were also doing something with pieces of that ship you two came to Earth on. We have a case on our hands, I think. We should call Batgirl. Starfire said. Yeah, and Robin too. Wally said but frowned as the two aliens shared a look. What? Batgirl is in charge of things right now, at least as far as we can tell. Call him if you want though. Naruto said as he began calling the local authorities and Starfire called Barbara. Wally narrowed his eyes before pulling out his communicator and calling Robin. It took longer than usual for the other boy to answer, but when he did he seemed grumpy and too busy to talk. What do you need, Wally? Listen Rob, I was up here in the national park and witnessed some of Cinderblock's guys kill people. They were collecting alien tech leftovers from when he began to explain. Have you told Batgirl? The other boy asked. Starfire is right now. Kid Flash said, a bit put off by the interruption. She will handle it. I have my hands full. Robin replied before the communicator clicked off. Wally stared at it for a moment before gritting his teeth. He had a dozen dead people on his hands and criminals trying to do something with alien tech, and Robin was too busy for that. What the actual hell was going on? Barbara and the police are on their way. She is bringing the rest of the team and our gear. Naruto called out to Wally. Good. At least one of our leaders is leading. He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. The team began working with the police on the case surrounding Cinderblock's thugs. While Robin left that to Batgirl to organize and control, he continued his investigation of Slade. It was rare that the mercenary would remain under the radar for so long. However, the Justice League was looking for him as well. One didn't attempt to kill a hero, even one that wasn't a part of the League, without feeling the heat. Robin wanted to get his hands on the Terminator first though. He may have missed the event that crippled Jamie, but the least he could do was bring the man that had attacked him to justice. Not to mention figuring out why someone had Deathstroke trying to kill Barbara. That was something of a personal factor for. The only issue was there were practically no leads. It was like Slade had vanished to thin air and hadn't needed to come out of hiding for a job since he shot Jamie. Whoever had hired him had to have paid quite a lot if that was the case. So that kind of narrowed the possible employers down a bit. Not near enough though. Robin had tried to attack the problem from different angles, hoping for a bit of a different perspective, giving him a breakthrough. Figuring out why someone would target Barbara had been a good attempt. It didn't pan out too much in the long run though. Except annoying Barb. He had kind of stalked her for a couple of days to see if she interacted with someone acting differently than they normally would. Barbara had lambasted him that he should have just asked her if she thought someone was taking a shot at her. She also pointed out that since she actually interacted with the people he was checking out, she was in a better position to notice if they were behaving differently. He had admitted to that point. He still hadn't backed off on his attempts at investigating though. Lately, even spending time at the position that they had identified as the spot Deathstroke had fired his rifle from. It was odd that Barbara hadn't called or messaged him with some kind of update on how things with the Cinderblock situation was going. He appreciated her taking control of things, but he couldn't help but worry at the same time. He pushed thoughts about his girlfriend and the rest of his teammates out of his mind. His focus was on Slade and he intended for him to remain there. There had to be something that they had missed. The door to the rooftop that Slade had used opened as it had the last dozen times that Robin had come up here. This time however he was surprised to find someone waiting on him. He moved to grab a weapon from his belt before feeling himself freeze in place against his will. I'm not here to fight. I shouldn't be here at all, but we both have someone that fucked with people we care about. His captor said as they closed the door to make sure things remained private for their conversation. Getting Cinderblock's base of operations from his thugs hadn't taken long. Still, Barbara worried that the criminal would be in the wind by the time they hit the warehouse he was operating out of. He most definitely wasn't. The only issue was that this Cinderblock was not the one they were expecting. Rather than the concrete-like giant, an Asian man with a mohawk stood at the head of the group of thugs with a shiny set of silvery teeth glinting between thin lips. Whoa, Cinderblock lost some weight since I saw him on the news last time. Beast Boy joked. My name isn't Cinderblock, I am the obvious gangster, began to say before he spasmed as he was hit with the stun darts from Naruto. The rest of the Titans turned to look at Superior as he shrugged. He wasn't interested in some monologue. Barbara could appreciate that. Titans, round up the rest. Batgirl ordered and the team dove into action. The thugs armed with guns attempted to open up on the team, but Raven easily countered it with her powers as she created a shield of dark energy between them and the incoming bullets. Cod Flash followed up by racing through their enemies and liberating the guns from each of them and piling them in front of Beast Boy, who happily smashed them into useless metal hunks with the weight of a whale. While they handled the firearms with relative ease, the rest of the team engaged the thugs themselves. Cyborg sent them scurrying for cover as he opened fire with his cannon, set to stun them of course. As they tried to avoid the blasts of blue energy, Naruto and Batgirl swept in and began quickly, either disabling or knocking them unconscious, and Starfire swept along above making sure no one could hide or escape. It took only moments before the warehouse full of criminals was defeated. The Titans gathered up their defeated enemies and began taking stock of the warehouse's contents. Arched crates covered most of the space, each one containing some broken piece of wreckage. Along one wall, several rudimentary cleaning areas had been created where nothing short of garden hoses and scrub brushes were used to scrub the earth and debris off of the alien wreckage. So this stuff is pretty much scrap at this point. Barbara pointed out as she looked over the busted pieces of equipment in each crate. What was the point anyway? Naruto asked. Who knows, there are all sorts of buyers around the world for this sort of thing, even if it's just hunks of broken metal. Police are on their way to take in these guys. If that guy wasn't Cinderblock, was he ever even here? Cyborg chimed in. We'll be finding out soon. Batgirl said as she grabbed the man that she had mentally dubbed Mohawk. He wouldn't be going with the police immediately like the rest. Robin stared down the girl across from him. Jinx looked as dangerous as usual, especially since she had the drop on him, but she also looked like she was sick. Perhaps something was wrong with her. Maybe he could use that to his advantage to get free. For now he planned to at least hear her out, even if he expected it to be more of a maddened rant than anything actually useful. So are you calm enough to listen to me? Cause the way you're all tensed up makes me think you aren't. It kind of makes me think you are trying to think of a way to try and jump me. Jinx taunted as she tightened the cables binding Robin up with her magic. Ugh, just say what you have to say. He grunted through gritted teeth. Not very cooperative for a potential partner, but I suppose you will have to do either way. She said as the taunting grin slipped from her face to be replaced by a scowl. Robin said nothing and simply stared back at the villainous that led his team's primary rivals. If she was going to offer something up, he hoped she got to it soon. The cables she used were really digging into his skin. Still can't find a trace of Deathster, can you? She asked, causing him to simply narrow his eyes even more to glare harder. Ah, that's a nope. See, you really need a lead on him and I might just have something for you. No purchase necessary. Just make sure to actually find that asshole. Jinx continued on. Why would you help me? He demanded. I couldn't care less about helping you. You are going to be helping me. We can make it a little race or something. You do the legwork of following down the lead I am going to give you, then when you find him, we see who gets to him first. You or me. Winner gets to decide what happens to him. Robin scoffed. He would kill you even if you beat me there. Maybe, or maybe my team and I will bleed him dry and you can clean up the mess. Wouldn't that be nice? Maybe you even want me to find him first. We heard what he did to your boy in blue. Must make you pretty steamed. Jinx continued to taunt knowing that she was really driving under the boy wonder's skin. Shut up, actually, why do you have a problem with him anyway? Robin asked as he grew curious. Jinx's grin fell away once again. He had pressed in on a sore spot or perhaps something else. Either way, the little game of her taunting him was over. She was clearly annoyed now and the rest of the meeting wouldn't be long, he imagined. It doesn't matter. Your team is already after Cinderblock's little group of idiots. They were supposed to be making a drop-off of whatever they could scrounge up with that alien tech at an old mall on the north side of Jump City. Not sure when, but maybe the guys your people are heading over to knock around will know. Why would Slade have anything to do with that? Not exactly his MO, Robin pointed out. Unless someone pays him for security. Take the tip or don't, just hurry up and find the fucker. Jinx said before stalking to the roofway door and opening it up. The cables will release you in 20 minutes. Your team will probably be done at Cinderblock's warehouse by then. Might be time to make a few calls if I were you. Jinx said as she slipped out the door and disappeared. Robin could only grit his teeth further and wait. He couldn't quite reach his utility belt, so foreign himself would be out of the question. What if Naruto was an alien hero in DC? End here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.